Terrific. So welcome to the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Village of Southampton, November 19th, 2020. And I think we have one written decision ready to start out with, number 3045 Meredith Joyce Trust, 765 Hill Street. I don't think we've voted on this at a public meeting. Is that true, David?
That is correct.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the decision in case number 3045, Meredith Joyce Trust, 765 Hill Street?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor of approving the decision?
Aye.
If we vote aye, that means we're turning it down, right?
So let me go through this. There are three different variances. The first was for an addition of an accessory building that exceeds 800 square feet. The second variance is for the accessory building to be placed within a front yard. And the third variance is for the gross floor area of the accessory building not to be included in the gross floor area. So the decision is written, granted the first two variances, granted the variance for the accessory building that exceeds 800 square feet, granted the variance for the accessory building to be placed within a front yard, but denied the variance for the gross floor area of the accessory building not to be included in the gross floor area.
I vote aye.
Julia, your vote?
My vote is aye as well.
Aye, I'm Susan.
Susan is an aye, and I am an aye in favor of the decision as written.
And I was aye and an aye on two, but I was an A on the gross floor area.
So you would approve the variances for the 800 square feet, which exceeds the maximum allowable.
Yeah, the new law for that. Right.
And you would vote in favor of the accessory building being placed in the front yard, but you would also grant the variance in favor of the gross floor area of the accessory building not being included in the gross floor area.
Right.
Okay.
So he has to vote nay then.
So Dan is a nay in terms of approving or disapproving the decision as written. So it's 4 votes in favor of the decision as written and 1 vote against the decision as written.
Okay.
So our first case, ongoing, 950 Meadow Lane. Do we have anybody from the applicant?
Yeah, there are 2 people. Hold on 1 second. Let me bring them in. Here's John Bennett's coming in, and also Christopher Kelly is coming in.
Should I proceed?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. John Bennett for the applicant, Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane. This is the 4th meeting we've had. The home has been through quite a few iterations. There's been quite a few changes to the plan, all in response to the request of the applicant. I heard the applicant, both the board members and Mr. Voorhees say net, this is an environmental benefit. We moved stuff as far away as we could from the wetlands. We've drained a tennis court that wasn't previously drained. We have a substantial revegetation plan, all the stuff that the board directed us to do and more. We shrunk the size of the house. The house, by the way, is getting all of the improvements are getting out of the coastal erosion hazard area. You know, a letter of support from the neighbor to the west, and we thought we had support from the neighbor to the east, who wrote a letter saying that, at the very end, saying if we could work out the landscaping plan, that they would support the application. Now, remember, this landscaping plan has nothing to do with the criteria. This is a buffer plan, has nothing to do with the criteria for issuance of a wetland special permit. And I've demonstrated that the location is just a retaining wall to create what the trustees have directed, which is fill in the area so that these high FEMA zone houses don't stick out like houses on pilings and sticks, number one, and also to further increase, as was demonstrated unequivocally and unrefuted by our landscape team, better growing for the plants near the house. But we submitted all of that, and then there was a request for us to speak, to have our landscape design team, Tim Rumpf, and the landscape folks from Sawyer Burson, who are also licensed landscape architects, to speak with Perry Gio, who is the landscape architect for the neighbor to the east, who wants us to move the house. Again, I don't understand why. The house conforms to zoning in all aspects. It's not even as large as zoning allows. We're not here for any zoning relief. A request to move the house has nothing to do with the criteria for a granting of a wetlands permit, which we've more than adequately demonstrated to you that we've met. We're even further away than probably about 20 cases that I handed into you. But in any event, even though there's not, technically related to the criteria for granting the wetlands permit, we wanted to see if we could come to some agreement with the neighbor to give the neighbor some screening, because that helps everybody. So we met, John Burson met and his team, and Brian Sawyer met, I guess, remotely with Perry Gio. We sent him some plans, as Mr. Burson related in a conversation. Perry was concerned that we didn't have enough width, in between the property line and where we're planting the plants for them to grow. Again, this is screening, not anything to do with the wetlands jurisdiction, but again, trying to reach some compromise or agreement with the neighbor. And as Mr. Burson states in his affidavit, Mr. Gio concluded that if our office was able to effect an 8-foot wide strip of planting, then again, they would be satisfied with this. So that's what we did. And we also made the plans and changes that Mr. Gio, who's a, world famous landscape architect, good guy, that he wanted us to make. We were able to locate an additional 4-foot wide planting strip west of the retaining wall, while maintaining the 6-foot clearance of the sanitary system, all very tight in there, because it's sanitary system, which originally the objectant wanted us to move closer to the wetlands. We have to stay where that is, because so that conforms. And on November 5th, John had a conversation with Mr. Gio. He stated that he had reviewed the revised planting plan, which we're submitting, and we have no problem with you conditioning an approval on, with his client, and his client had accepted it. And then later, later on, we got a letter from, I sent a letter to the board saying that, Gio had met with Burson, and Burson and Gio agreed. And again, these are not privileged conversations because they're not between attorneys. That Gio had met with his client, and his client was happy with the amendments and the changes that we had met, again, on this planting screen plan, which is an accommodation, nothing to do with your wetlands jurisdiction. And so I was anxious to get it in because it had taken a while. I wanted to get it in, before the work session, whatever that is, a couple days before the work session. And I asked Mr. Kelly to just agree with the letter, where I had recounted what I'd been told by Mr. Burson and what he had been told by Mr. Gio. And Chris said he was very jammed up. He'd get to it, and that's what happened. So I didn't think anything of it because we're all busy, and I felt confident because Gio and Burson and the Aries team had all met and again agreed as an accommodation to this additional landscape planting. So I was surprised when I got a letter from Mr. Kelly saying that they still wanted the house moved further away, which again has nothing to do, the house conforms, has nothing to do with your wetlands criteria. But he did say, and I think, kindly, he did say that if for some reason the board didn't want us to do that, which I don't think they should, and that would be improper and outside, the jurisdiction, the criteria, that he wanted certain conditions to planting of the plants to make sure that they survived. And I took Mr. Kelly's conditions verbatim in his letter. He wanted a 3-year bond and some other things, and just an assurance that the plants would survive and they would be replanted if they didn't. And we have no problem whatsoever with that. I think he wanted a 2-year bond. I think Chick usually requires a 3-year bond on the wetlands planting. So we have no problem whatsoever to adding to that the other plants. So we have no problem whatsoever with that. I will say, and I don't, I sort of scratch my head because I really don't like to do this because, applications should stand on their own. But, I thought it pretty interesting that the next door neighbor is telling us we have too big of a house. We have approximately a 12,000 square foot house. The next door neighbor's pulling from the mass appraisal information, which, is usually generally correct, but not always. But nevertheless, that's what we have. Is 13,500 square feet. So sort of scratching my head why our house is too big. It's less than allowed under zoning. It complies with everything. And the neighbor's house is 13,500 square foot too big on a 130,000 square foot lot. We're about 1,200 on a 160,000 square foot lot. And we did also submit back in July, because that's how long this case has been going on, a wetlands plan, which shows that, interestingly enough, a substantial amount, the access driveway and a substantial amount of the lawn on the complaining neighbor's property does not comply with the setbacks from the wetlands. Now, this house was built after 1989. How that happened, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't really care. And neither does my client care about that. But if you're gonna throw stones, don't live in a glass house. We have a project which complies as, I think it's been. This is a project that I've been proud to represent Mr. Corey on. It takes this piece of property, which has a wildly non-conforming house in terms of a coastal erosion setback, and takes all the improvements, makes this a FEMA compliant house, an enormous amount of revegetation to this property. This is a net benefit to the environment. I think, as everyone has recognized, every board member has recognized. Well, maybe not Susan, you weren't on here at the time, but this is, as I say, this is the 4th hearing. But in any event, I would simply like you, I'm sure Mr. Kelly would have something to say. I would simply like you just to close the hearing and give us a decision. As we said, we're more than happy to agree to mollify Mr. Kelly's client's concerns that these plantings won't survive. We feel 2 of the best landscape architects, certainly, in the state, have said that they would, but we'll put our money where our mouth is and confirm that we'll replant anything that doesn't live, and we'll post a bond for that. Mr. Kelly wants 2 years, we'll have 3 years, so I think that's what Chick would require anyway. I'm sort of frustrated. I thought this was a done deal. We worked really hard to get this last piece of it, which again, doesn't really have anything to do with the wetlands criteria, taken care of, because Mr. Kelly had said in his letter that he would his client would support the application if we could work that out. So,
Okay, John, let's try to move this along and we'll hear from Mr. Kelly.
sure.
Christopher Kelly, Toomey Latham Shea, Kelly, Dubin, and Cordero for the neighbor at 930 Meadow Lane. I don't think it makes sense for us to get into a debate about who said what to whom, but my understanding from Mr. Guillot was that he had a discussion with the architect and that he left it saying the attorneys will have to work it out. We have to confirm it with our client. I subsequently had to meet with the client, and John, for reasons of getting his letter in at a certain time, decided to send the letter in prematurely, I believe, before we actually had an agreement. Our client's concerned about the impact of this, and I do believe under the criteria in the code, you have the ability to locate structures, any structure, so as to minimize its impact on the neighborhood, on wetlands, on neighbors. All we're asking here is a movement of the house 10 to 15 feet to the west, because we think that will enable more significant screening to be planted on that eastern boundary. There's a lot of stuff in this project. There's a huge retaining wall. There's a huge septic field. There's a big house. We're trying to work our way around a tennis court, which seems to be the tail wagging the dog. We did say, however, in the letter that if the board decided not to move the house, we would accept the landscaping there, provided there was a good solid way to ensure that it ended up in the ground and looking like the renderings and the plan that was submitted. And we believe that what we'd have to do is have to incorporate the plan and the renderings into the decision by reference, that we'd ask that that no CO be issued until the building inspector actually certified that all that work was done in accordance with the plan and the renderings, and that there be a bond. And 3 years is certainly better than 2, and we'd be happy to accept that.
I have no problem with those conditions that regarding the planting plan that Mr. Kelly laid out. That's what we thought we had. We're more than happy to make sure that all those plants stay there and they're bonded. And I would accept putting that planting plan into the decision as a condition and the appropriate bond. No, that's fine with me. But I would ask you to close it and make a decision.
David, do you have any issues with the conditions? Because one thing I thought I heard Chris say was he would also want the building inspector to certify that the plantings comply with
Well,
the plan
Condition
and
of his
rendering.
CO, he'd be doing that and issuing the C of O.
Okay,
It could either be, it could either be the building inspector or Chick. It doesn't matter to me.
Either would be.
Typically, it's the
Okay.
building inspector, and they ask us to review if they, want some more scientific input.
So again, I would.
I don't think we're an enforcement agency. I think it should just be left to the building department.
right. We are. We're going to leave it to the building department. David, do you have any other issues with how you would write the decision?
No, those conditions are very clear and have been well thought out by 2 more than competent counsel, so.
Hey, and David, one thing, Chris said, but I don't think we have the jurisdiction to weigh in on the location of the house as long as it complies with setbacks. We do have, a mandate to look at the location of the retaining wall, because that's within the 150-foot setback. But as far as the house location, I don't believe we have any authority with respect to that, unless somehow it's tied to the retaining wall.
I agree.
But the reason you have the retaining wall there is to provide fill into the house.
We have a
Yeah.
motion on this.
Why don't we close it? I've responded in volumes to the appropriateness.
Yeah. I think we're ready to close for decision.
Absolutely.
Well, we will close. Okay, so why don't we have a motion to close this for decision?
I move we close this for decision.
We have a
I'll
second.
second.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What, I
Sorry.
have some concerns about how the wetlands will be affected by the actual building of the house. Is there any,
There's a very specific construction methodology which has been in the record for about 2 or 3 months.
okay. I didn't
Yeah,
get.
we wouldn't come to the board without that. There's staging areas.
I don't have
there's
that.
Yeah,
That would be written into the conditions and the plans that would be part of the permit as well. And we have reviewed that.
We have a second.
Well, why don't we also, let's not jump the gun here. Is there anybody from the audience who wants to be heard?
Yes, there is. Jill Brofman would like to come in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's in.
With your patience, really, I just want to say that I hope, if not today and not in this particular board meeting, I hope there's a conversation that happens about how to rebalance what's going on with approvals. What we have here and in many other places is a situation where one homeowner is creating massive value for themselves on their property, and another homeowner is having a massive reduction in the value of their property. Now, I know that this is not a wetlands issue, but from the very tip of my pool to the very tip of my house, the entire western side of my house is going to be blocked and put into shadow. And I do think, particularly in a resort community, it is a value to have a view to the west out of your house. And it is certainly a value to have sun on your property, particularly your pool deck, without, a massive wall making it look really unappealing. So this is why we have had to go back and forth and request plantings when in fact the original plan had no basis in reality and could not have been executed effectively. So I'm sorry that this has gone back and forth so many times, but certainly I'm looking at a massive reduction in the value and enjoyment that I'm going to have in my home. And I don't know, again, whether or not formally it is part of your purview, but I do hope that things change at some point in the future and at some board, because it's just, Southampton is not going to look like Southampton much longer if this keeps going on. Thank you.
May I remind the chair, we have a motion and a second to the motion.
Yeah, thank you. David, that's something that we were talking about as well, is just, yes, we don't have any zoning restrictions that address this situation. Does the Architectural Review Board in any way have any authority here?
I'm not sure of that. I
don't
believe
think-
their
I don't
purview is
think so.
limited to,
Something that has
views from
nothing
the
to
street,
do
but
with
that's
this.
not your concern, or that's not this board's concern.
No, I agree. I'm a little sympathetic to the neighbors' concerns about what's happening and the fact that we don't have any
I have a gorgeous view.
restrictions.
They're saying a house can't be built next to them? We're getting
Well, elevated the way it is.
way
And
off
we
the
don't-
track here, way off the track. Remind you again, we have a motion and a second to the motion. Did we carry?
Okay, why don't we put it up for a vote then? All in favor of closing this for decision?
Aye.
All right.
Susan?
Nay.
What- you have to have a reason.
Well, it just means we would want more deliberation and not closing it for decision,
What
but
are we deliberating? There's
What's still left to deliver, right?
nothing left to deliver. These people have been nitpicking and nitpicking forever. You could move the house back to 15 feet and they still find something else to nitpick about. This is getting ridiculous. Absolutely.
This is the first time I've seen someone in my 38 years of practice, a neighbor who is going to have a house moved out of their ocean view, complain about a house that's 16,000 square feet smaller than their house. And we've given all the testimony. This has been the fourth time. You can deliberate, but you're supposed to close the meeting now. You don't have to have the meeting open to deliberate, and your counsel will tell you that.
We
It's
have
just
a
time to
motion.
close the meeting.
What about the other two members?
Well, it's true. Julia, where do you stand on closing it for decision, but knowing that we can deliberate for, for as long as we would like and render a decision when we're comfortable. But for right now, we're closing it.
62 days.
I'm sorry?
62 days from the close for a decision.
So we would have 62 days to deliberate it. And what we're saying by closing it for decision is that we just would no longer have public hearings with respect to this application. Is that correct?
No, you
Correct.
have to,
Julia,
That's
you're
right.
muted.
Thank you, David, because I did say aye when the first motion was made.
We got three
I'm
votes.
prepared to close it for a decision.
Okay, so we have a majority
But I-
voting to close it for decision. We'll close it for decision and we'll talk at the next work session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk about. Talk this thing.
We're on to the next case, which I believe is case number 3079, Felix and Elizabeth Royaten Trust, 365 and 385 South Main Street. Is there anybody here for the applicant?
Yes, John Bennett is here, I believe. Sorry about that, John. I didn't know you were here for the next case.
Just let me know if you want, and I'll proceed. I'm here. It's John Bennett. I'm here with as co-counsel to Linda Riley.
We're ready.
Okay. This is, I have to tell you, this is a decision, deliberations. I'm going to be very frank with you that the better end of the East End Bar has been following in sort of a dumbfounded way. This is a decision that probably should have been granted in one night. If you look at all of the case law, not only.
I don't want to be admonished. Could you just talk about the application?
Mrs. Stevenson, you're now a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, which follows a set of strict rules. I have the opportunity to put my case in. You're not supposed to cross-examine me or admonish me during the time of my presentation, please. So if you don't like my rhetoric, I apologize, but
I'd like to
let me
hear
put my
about the
case in.
application, not about anything else.
Let me put my case in, please. Okay, so now you have two pieces of property for you in front of you, 365 South Main Street and 385 South Main Street. We have significant case law, including a case involving the village of Southampton back in the 60s, in which the court held that the village law doesn't have a merger provision. What you have in the village law is you have a single and separate provision that if you have single and separate ownership, you get certain relief. You get 4/10 relief, but as we've determined, we don't need that relief. In any event, there's no automatic specific merger provision in the village code. This has been litigated. It's also not only in the Soros case, but the Adami case. I'm not going to bore the board with that, nor am I going to bore the board with the numerous case law in which it said that in these circumstances, regardless of what the statute says, because any other interpretation would be contrary to the precepts of zoning, regardless of what a statute says about common ownership, in these situations, you have two lots, each with separate road frontage, each already improved by a house. There's no merger here. Indeed, the town of Southampton, I gave you some case, a couple of cases out of the town of Southampton, which has the exact same language. They're both old McCruskey-Reuter-based 1970 codes. That's where those continuations provisions come in. So the town of Southampton code, exact same language. Town of Southampton says it's impossible, physically, legally impossible to merge two improved lots. Now that's this is all by way of interpretation. I'm going to talk quite a bit about the variance standards, but these are by way of interpretation. So the sister community, which has the exact same language, has said you can't merge two improved lots. I think, as Mr. Guzowitz pointed out, that would be, and Mr. Guider pointed out, you would be creating a nonconformity because you can't have two single-family residences on one lot. The village will allow you to have a single-family residence and a guest house because it specifically has a language on that. And you dealt with that in the Wombold case. But this is a situation where you would have two primary residences on one lot, which would be a non-conforming use. So a denial of either by interpretation or by variance of this would create a non-conformity, which the village code says you're not supposed to. So I'm going to leave the determination arguments, which are very, very strong, and I think are irrefutable, to your counsel and to your own reading, because they are what they are, and the cases stand for this proposition that they stand for. And I'll ask you to read them, and I'll ask all of you to read these, particularly my memorandum, which I think is extremely forceful. Let me talk to you about the variance standards. What do you have here? So if for some reason the board didn't want to do it by determination, which I think there's more than adequate reason to do that, what we're asking for is a variance from the required 120,000 square feet to 86,000 square feet for 365 South Main and 89,000 square feet for 385 South Main. We don't need any setback relief because the lots are big enough and can comfortably do what they need to do, which is to have single-family residences and appropriate accessory structures on it. So again, I submitted that memorandum of law. I want to touch upon a few of the main points. What do you have to look at in a case like this? You have to look at the character of the neighborhood, and that's what, as all this case law and all these commentaries have said, you have those 5 factors. The most important one is the character of the neighborhood, so you don't do any sort of violence to the character of the neighborhood. There's this town of Brookhaven said, if the applicant is seeking variance to conform to which is prevalent in the neighborhood, a denial of the relief will be found to be arbitrary. So this is a portion of the village that was in the old 60s code, was zoned, I think, what amounts to R60, then it went to R80, then back in the 83, it went to R120. But I'm going to take you through very slowly. I'm going to take you through the character of the neighborhood, and I'm going to show you in terms of number of lots in relation to the subject properties, how you're supposed to look at a character of the neighborhood. And you'll see that we more than adequately conform to the character of the neighborhood. And given that, I don't see that, and this is one of those rare cases, I simply don't see that you have any option but to grant the relief. The case law is extremely strong. And I'm going to say I watched all the prior hearings, I watched the prior work sessions, and the 2 members who have zoned in on this exactly are Mr. Guider and Mr. Guzowitz. What have they said? Well, we have to be consistent. And I'm going to tell you there are 4 cases, including one that I handled about 6 years ago. 2 2-acre zones were on 2 2-acre parcels about 1,500 feet down the street were unmerged in an R120 zone, 2 2-acre parcels, the Cowles case, a case that's not even as compelling as this case. In Cowles, which is on the corner of Little Plains and Gin, and you can't escape your precedent. There's a case out of a Rickenbacker case out of East Hampton. In that Cowles case, which I handled, there were 2 2-acre lots, and they had been owned by Mrs. Cowles and her family from 1978 until 2013, when the board granted the relief to recreate those lots, they were taken by one deed, and they were subsequently transferred to a family trust in one deed. Unlike here, where you had but they were separately taxed. Unlike here, where you've had two separate houses since the 50s. One on this was a vacant lot and the two lot subdivision in the 50s. Then there's a house in the 50s and then a house to the north that had been there for some time, but always separately taxed, always have two, treated as two separate houses. In Cowles, you had two 2-acre lots, which this board unmerged for lack of, I don't think there's a merger clause, but that's what they did. In Cowles, there was a single family residence on the westerly lot, on the easterly lot, which was on the corner of Little Plains and Gin. And on the westerly lot, there was nothing but a swimming pool. So they were actually used in conjunction, clearly, not just some water feature in the back, which is doesn't even require a building permit. But in Cowles, you only had one house. You had two 2-acre lots, and you did what the case law said you were supposed to do, and your own precedent said you were supposed to do. You unmerged them. That's why Mr. Guider said, we have to be consistent, and you do have to be consistent. That's the Hamptons versus Village of East Hampton case. You can't reach contrary results on similar facts. And if anything, as I've demonstrated by going through the facts, the Cowles cases was even less compelling. That's why Mr. Guider said you have to be consistent. To decide this case contrary to the applicant's request would be inconsistent with the Cowles case, and the Cowles case was even less compelling. You can't escape that. Let's talk about the other ways in this zone that this board has treated the very same situation where you have two houses on two lots that were in the same name, but the board recognizing that you have two houses already. The density, as Mr. Guzowitz and Mr. Guider has said, you're not increasing density here. The density is there. There are two homes there. The Andrew Biddle Duke had a 64,000 square foot house lot and a 68,000 square foot house lot. Each had a house on it. You properly and wisely and fairly and intelligently unmerge the lots. The DeGieve property, 42,000 square feet and 36,000 square feet in this R120 zone, a house on each lot. Even smaller lots, you unmerge them. Dorothy Price, each lot was 88,048 square feet, each lot in a R120 zone. You unmerge them. That's what you're supposed to do. They each had a house on it. There's no detriment to the community. The density is already there. So that's what you've consistently done. And that's what you are required to do in this case. We submitted a memorandum studying the surrounding properties. And I want to tell you what the Supreme Courts have said about, what is the relationship of conforming lots to non-conforming lots. Fortunately, we're able to pull out a couple of cases. The Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Freeport, which is a second department case, it's in our memorandum of law. 17 of the 27 properties were substandard. Our percentage, we're going to show you, is much, much, much higher in that case. Then in Brower versus Board of Appeals, again, very similar. It wasn't, it wasn't every lot was non-conforming. You can't take a few lots and say, well, you got a conforming lot there, you got a conforming lot there. You have to look at the entire neighborhood, which is what we did. So this is what we did. First, we looked at the R120 zoning district north of Gin Lane and south of Linden, from Lake Agawam to Little Plains, okay? Because why did we stop at Linden? Because that's where the R120 zone stops, on the west side of the road. If we had gone to the east side, the percentage would have been much higher, but we thought keep it in the R120 zone in terms of the character of the neighborhood. So in that study area, 53 lots, 1 is conforming. That's Charles Stevenson's lot to the north of one of these lots. 1 is non-conforming. Is conforming, I should say.
John, can I stop you just, I mean, you can finish or however you want to proceed, or do you want to just wait for questions at the end? Can you hear me?
Yes, please do. Please do. I'm prepared for any question you could possibly have.
Just something you said just jumps out at me. 1 lot is conforming?
In the area between, this is what happened when we looked at the Cowles case. The Cowles case was Little Plains, South Main, Gin, the north side of Gin, okay? And then that block, in that entire block, there were no conforming lots, which is why you made the finding that you did. Now, since we're on the west side of South Main, we went all the way up to Linden. And in that area, 1 conforming lot. It's Charles Stevenson's house.
There's a couple. So what about 56 Gin Lane, 27 Gin
I
Lane,
didn't
28
get,
Gin
Mark,
Lane, 24
I
Gin Lane?
didn't get there yet.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
I'm gonna get there.
I just feel like you're gerrymandering the neighborhood.
I'm gonna get there, Mark. I'm gonna get there. You have to let me finish.
Go ahead.
Okay. We looked at the south side of Gin Lane between the Bathing Corp and Fairleigh. And of those 12 properties studied, only 4 of them conform to the R120 district. Okay. And we stayed on the north side initially because we don't think that the oceanfront are truly part of the neighborhood, but you know what? We threw them in. I'm going to show you what happened when we threw them in, because I heard what you said. You started talking about oceanfront lots. Mark, you specifically started talking about oceanfront lots.
Mhm.
So from Gin Lane, between the Bathing Corp and Fairleigh, of those 12 property studies, only 4 of those properties were conforming. And that's not surprising because Fairleigh, some of the lots there are less than 40,000 square feet. And we didn't just rely on the tax map numbers, we put the actual deeds in because the lots are the Fairleigh, the street is actually made up of portions of those lots because it's a private road, very, very small lots. And then I heard you talking, Mark, about Gin Lane. Then we looked at Gin Lane from the Bathing Corp all the way to Little Plains Road, which is the area that you talked about again. Within that area, there are 14 of those lots. Of those 14 lots, 8 are conforming. 120, 140, 104, 88, 72, 56, 46, and 5 Fairleigh. But this isn't even an oceanfront property, but we put them in there anyway. So if you take all of this area, all the parcels within the R120 zoning district, south of Linden, between the Bathing Corp and Little Plains, 79 properties, 79, 13 conform. That's 16% of the properties are conforming. So under the case law and the percentages and the way that the case law, not me, the case law has determined how you look at these properties in cases for the creation of non-conforming lots, clearly under any reading, the predominant size in the neighborhoods are non-conforming. There's no question about it.
But John, and again, I can wait until the end, or if you don't mind the interruptions. You're kind of defining your own 120 zone, aren't you? Why aren't you including Great Plains ox pasture? Why aren't you?
That's because that's not the neighborhood, Mark. And if
you're defining the neighborhood the way you want to say,
if you're going to say that you get to include the entire village,
no, I said the entire 120.
That's what you're saying.
No,
the R120 zone is a half of the village.
Right, but isn't the R120
That's not the neighborhood?
Zone, isn't that what was created by the upzoning in 1983?
What does that mean? What does that have to do with anything?
It has to do with why we're here.
No, it doesn't. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be very direct. I heard you say something that has absolutely no basis in law at the work session You said, we're here to guard the master plan. That, you will not find anyone saying that in any authority, any case law, any code section, any statute, anywhere. The only reference to someone
It's in our
having to
zoning
be.
code.
No. Well, no, the only person who has to act with an eye on the master plan under I'll tell you right now, because under 7-722 of the New York State Village Law, the trustees have to legislate.
No, I'm
With
reading
my-
from our village law. Doesn't it say that we have to follow the master plan or should be guided by the master plan?
If you followed the master plan every time, you couldn't grant any variances. Your function is absolutely, totally different than the trustees. The trustees under section 7-722 are required by the New York State legislatures to legislate with an eye on the master plan. You are supposed to do nothing other than apply the 5 standards. Character, I'm not going to bore you with them because you know them.
No, but I know those, but what should I do with 116-27 of our own village code, which in section 4 says, such variance is so designated as to provide reasonable consideration to, among other things, the character of the neighborhood or district, the conservation of property values in the vicinity, and the guidance of building development in accordance with the master plan. What should we do with that section? Ignore it?
To the extent that it would prohibit you from, you think it would prohibit you from granting these variances, which I will tell you would be an absolute abuse of discretion. Yeah, I guess you should, because you know something? You're supposed to follow the 5 standards. And by the way, to the extent that that law is contrary to your express directive contained in the New York State Village Code, your council will tell you that you are required to follow the 5 standards regardless of what the Village Code says. Section 7-712B of the New York State Town Law preempts. And that's Court of Appeals.
No, absolutely. We are following the guidance.
Why are you talking about why are you talking about what the provisions are of the Village Code? Because those are not part of your standards. To the extent that they're contrary to the standards contained in the New York State Town Law, and I'm not gonna, you can ask your counsel this in camera.
I never said they were contrary.
If I may, Mr. Bennett is correct. I know that we did speak about this at the work session as well. The standards in 7-712B are the standards the board is to use while evaluating the grant of a variance. The extent that they're different from those in the village code, they control over the village code.
And what I'm saying is that they're not different, they're complementary.
No, Mark, that's not what you're saying. You're saying that it.
What I'm saying.
Well,
That is what I'm saying. I'm saying they're complementary.
Mark, just because you say it doesn't make it right.
Okay, what I'm saying is
the variance is to be evaluated by the standards of the New York State Village Law, not the standards that are in the village code.
Period.
Those standards have been changed by statute and by case law first and statute.
I understand that entirely. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by, being guided by the village zoning code. The balancing that we are supposed to do is to balance the benefit to be realized by the applicant against the potential detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the neighborhood or community.
So let me interrupt you, Mark. Where is the detriment? You cannot say because you're not complying to your concept of the master plan that there's any detriment. That's conjecture, it's subjective, and the case law says you can't do that. I heard you last work session.
It wasn't my, okay, it was not my understanding of the master plan. The master plan specifically references the 3-acre upzoning.
So what?
Okay, so let me make
Hey, Mark.
If you don't interrupt me, I can make my point, okay? So one of the standards that we're supposed to look at is, of course, the balance between the benefit to be realized by the applicant against the potential detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the neighborhood or community. So where do I look for guidance on what might be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of the neighborhood or community? I don't want it to be just my personal opinion, although that weighs in, based upon my experience, but I also want to look to perhaps the master plan, because the master plan may guide me as to what factors I should look at to determine whether or not there's a potential detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the neighborhood. That's the connection.
Where's the detriment? Where's the detriment? Where's the detriment?
Where's the detriment?
Yeah, where's the detriment?
Increased density.
The density is there, Mark.
It's not there, John.
You know what? You can keep on saying this, but there's a house there.
That's going to be, what's the future of that house?
Excuse me?
What's the future of the house?
The future is the house is to be developed as any 2-acre lot could be, with appropriate sized additions or accessory structures, just the way everybody in the neighborhood is. And if you try to do something else, you're illegally holding me to a higher standard, contrary to about 30 cases that I've given you, Mark. You're grafting in the master plan, a violation in your mind of the master plan as a detriment to the community. That alone, leave that on the record, because I will tell you, a judge will smarten you up on that, because that you will
if you don't interrupt me, I can probably make my point. The master plan refers to increased density, protecting the village against increased density.
And how is there any increased
Why
density?
the 1983 Board of Trustees passed an upzoning is because in 1983, the trustees were concerned about increased density. They looked at the village and they saw a threat to the character of the community. They saw the possibility that there would be a potential detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the community. And they took it upon themselves to pass a law in 1983, upzoning. And
Okay,
all of these cases.
let me respond to that, Mark, because
But you're
that was the
interrupting me, so
argument
there's
that was
nothing to
made
respond
in
to
a-
yet, John.
What, excuse me?
There's nothing to respond to because I haven't finished the thought.
You're so far afield of the standards, and your counsel has told you that you are, but you're not listening.
I'm reading
It has
from the
nothing to do with
standard.
your standards.
I am reading from the standard.
No, you're
Verbatim.
not reading from the standards. You're saying that a protection, part of the detriment is increased density. Density is
Increased
there.
density.
Let me
It's not there.
talk to you. There's a case out of the Supreme Court, Suffolk County, that hit your point right on all fours. It was a case called Egan versus Trotta, and it's very interesting. In Egan versus Trotta, the owner went in, and the owner had a lot which, as a whole, didn't conform to the zoning. The whole lot didn't conform to the zoning. And he wanted to subdivide it into 2 lots that conform to the overwhelming, as we would hear, 84% of the neighborhood wanted to conform to the
Once again,
overwhelming.
John, you defined the neighborhood in a way that suited your purposes. I was defining my
No.
neighborhood in the same way that the zoning code does, which is R120. All of R120 in Southampton Village.
I challenge you to find any.
R120 and you gerrymandered
I
it.
challenge you to find any case that refers to the neighborhood as an entire zoning district. You're not going to find it.
Well, all you did was gerrymander a neighborhood that.
No, as a matter of fact, I didn't gerrymander it.
we
I
just
put
keep it-
together
can
what I
we
thought was a
speak in
very
level
sensible
tones?
neighborhood. I put together what I thought was a very sensible neighborhood, and then you jumped across the street. So what I did is I said, okay, let's jump across the street, and I still have only 16% conforming. But let me finish and tell you what the court said in this Trotta case. It was the Supreme Court Suffolk case where a guy had 1 lot that as a whole didn't conform to zoning. He wanted to subdivide it into 2 lots that would conform to the lots in the neighborhood. And the court said, when the Zoning Board of Appeals denied it, it was improper, it was arbitrary and capricious. So let me hit, this is what the Supreme Court Suffolk County said. Where a municipality purports to upzone a neighborhood that is nearly fully developed, that purported upzoning is functionally a futility. Established law is that in considering the request for an area variance, you have to look at the tendency to change the character of the neighborhood. But in purporting to upzone an established neighborhood, which the municipality realistically cannot do, the homeowners have already vested their rights to a certain type of development. It's the municipality, not the homeowners, that are trying to change illegally the neighborhood character. Thus, conversely, when the homeowner is requesting an area variance, would tend to maintain the neighborhood character, while the neighbor's municipality's resistance thereto reflects the municipality's futile effect to change the neighborhood character. They said, shame on that board. You had a one lot which hadn't been subdivided. Here we have two subdivided lots with two houses. And they said you should have granted him the relief to create those two lots, because even though the one lot as pre-subdivision didn't conform to the zoning code, the two resulting lots would have conformed. That you have to, you can't administer the zoning code of this town. You can't act in a vacuum and not be guided and follow the case law of the state of New York, not follow the guidelines that you're required to.
Yeah, I mean, every case has a different fact scenario, but it seems like
some cases, and the courts have recognized.
Like what you're saying, it seems like what you're saying is that the 1983 upzoning was futile in Southampton Village.
The 1983 upzoning, to the extent it would try to merge these lots as a matter of law.
No. You're saying that we shouldn't.
Mark, don't put words in my mouth, because I never said that the upzoning was futile. If I had a 6-acre lot or a 10-acre lot in an R120 zone, and I wanted to subdivide that, without showing that the character of the neighborhood was significantly different, I would probably have to conform to that zoning standard. That's not what we have here. We have two conforming lots that this board has we have two lots, each improved with a house. Those lots conform to the overwhelming character of the neighborhood. And I've given you now 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cases where the courts have said a denial would be arbitrary and illegal. You can argue whatever you want, Mark. You can say, you can graft on some sort of mythical requirement to conform to the master plan, despite the fact that that's not what the state law says. You can argue about the neighborhood as being the entire R120 zone, which is over half the village. And that's not what any of the cases say. I've done the hard work. I found the cases that define the neighborhood and define how you're supposed to act when you have two lots that conform to the overwhelming character of the neighborhood, 84%. If you want to cherry pick it some other way, go ahead, because you know something? I'm telling you right now, you don't find a hell of a lot of lots in the R120 zone that conform to the R120 zone. You certainly have less than half, and these cases say that's the neighborhood. So I'm not speculating. I gave you very, very specific cases that talked about percentages and number of lots. I thought I had put together a more than reasonable neighborhood, which, by the way, you guys recognize. You may not have been on the board, but you recognize as an appropriate neighborhood in the Cowles case. You did that. You stuck with that. It's a correct decision. I put together a perfect neighborhood analysis for you. You didn't like it. You started rattling off addresses across the street at the ocean. I included them. It doesn't significantly change the percentages. I don't see that you have an option. These are two-acre lots that conform to the, you go across in Fairleigh, go across the ocean. 40,000, 38,000, 39,000. The only lot on
Fairview
Ocean,
was built, the first community. I know you don't care about it.
but
No,
that's
it
still
doesn't.
the character of the
It's not
neighborhood. It
my
doesn't
personal-
matter when it was
I don't,
built.
please,
the
everyone, let's keep the
No, I'm
volume.
not, you can't pick these.
John,
can't
John,
stand
John,
it.
we've got your position. We do. We hear you loud and clear and we have your paper.
I want to respond to Susan's position. It's irrelevant to when Fairleigh was developed. It is part of the character of the neighborhood. So it could have been developed in 1066. It doesn't matter. It's part of the character of the neighborhood.
Okay,
Most of these lots,
John, we'll do our balancing. You know, we'll balance the potential detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the neighborhood against what should we see as the benefit to be realized by the applicant.
the benefit? Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to adjourn the case because I don't have the actual, appraisal. All I have is Harold Grant, probably the best broker out here, his letter opinion. The benefit is the difference between the value as two lots and one lot is about $8 million, which you as a broker should not be surprised at. Obviously, two separate buildable lots with each their intrinsic building rights of 2 acres are more valuable than a 4-acre lot with just one building right, which is essentially what you're confining this lot to illegally if you did it. So that's the benefit, number one. And and the fact that it's been in this location and in this position taxed as 2 parcels effectively forever. The detriment, there is no detriment.
John, we'll figure out what the detriment is.
No, you can't just figure it out. If you think there's detriment, Mark, you have to put it on the record.
We will put it on the record, and we have. I'm suggesting to you, you may not have heard it, but I'll repeat it.
Excuse me?
The detriment is increased density.
Whatsoever. None at all.
Excuse me?
I see no detriment here whatsoever. The lots are there, the houses are there.
The houses won't be there. Okay, the houses
Yeah,
are
but
going.
you're looking into the future. It's not our job to look into.
They've already put in, Dan, they've
The way
already put in for a
the way I look
demolition
at it
permit.
is that there were historically 2 lots there. Somewhere in the 90s, they merged. But historically, those were 2 lots in the village with 2 houses on them. And now they want to make it back to what it historically was. And I don't see a problem with that because it gets rid of the nonconformity.
But they're knocking down the houses, Dan.
Well, first of all,
I don't care.
Let me respond to that.
You do with this.
That doesn't matter, and that's not part of your consideration. You're not a historic
My
preservation.
consideration is an increase in density, John, so.
There's no,
John.
Mark, keep on saying that we're increasing the density. The density, as Mr. Guzowitz and Mr.
John.
Guider has said,
Can
and
I-
as
can I-
the case law says, the
John,
density.
one
is
thing I'd like
there.
to say is if I can't finish a sentence, okay, then I can't put into the record what my thought processes are. Okay, if you just interrupt me, I can't put into the record what my deliberations are. So can I finish?
This is a relatively simple case.
Can I finish,
Complicated.
Kevin? Can I finish?
Complicated.
Okay,
You make it too complicated, Mark.
it's not too complicated, it's actual reality. Okay, what's going to happen here is the village might want to see this as one 4-acre property with one house, one tennis court, and one, can I finish?
What do you mean by the village?
Wow. Who's the village? Who? You're the village now?
Nobody can speak in this. Why don't we move on? Do you want to close it? Because I can't finish the sentence.
No, I don't
I
want to
think you
close
should
that
close
because
it.
I
I
have a
can't
request to
take
keep it open. Mark, you said you wanted to finish. I sat there. I didn't say anything. I'm not talking.
Okay, so what we have is, and when I say the village, it's a shorthand for saying the interests of the village, I believe, would be better served by saying that this is one property that has the right to have one house, one tennis court, one pool house, And that is a question of density relative to the potential development, which the applicant wants, of 2 properties with 2 large houses, 2 tennis courts, 2 pool houses, and whatever other accessory structures they're allowed under the zoning code. The
Just like-
reason why,
Mhm.
okay, the reason why the applicant sees a economic problem is that instead of recognizing or agreeing that they have 1 4-acre property, that they merge these lots, somebody told them, if you had 2 lots here, you could sell it for more money to a purchaser, because the purchaser recognizes that having 2 lots with 2 houses, more density, 2 tennis courts is more valuable than having 1 property. That's the balancing that we're doing.
Are you testifying about a conversation that you overheard, Mark?
Mr. Chairman, this is just so unpleasant and so insulting. Please, let's close it.
No, you can't close it because I have a request to keep it open for further evidence, i.e. an appraisal from James McLaughlin and a further expert opinion from Anthony Tohill.
That's right. Can we close it for now?
I'm not done.
Motion to.
I'm not done.
Go ahead, John. Keep going, but please, if we have your papers, so a lot of this is already in writing.
And I'm asking that the tone of this discussion become more civil.
Okay, well,
It's very difficult to ascertain everyone's points if people are shouting and speaking over each other.
the detriment that you have to weigh under the code is not some speculation about a detriment to the village. It's dollars and cents detriment to the surrounding properties. So you can't just say that this detriment is, in your mind, the fact that you won't be able to undo a situation where there are 2 homes. And what you do is a weighing thing. And I put dollars and cents proof in. I'm going to put additional dollars and cents proof in. And you have to have in evidentiary form a countervailing detriment to some neighborhood person. And even that, by the way, even if there was, I don't really care if every neighbor opposed this application. The case law that you have in front of you says where all we're trying to do is conform to the character of the neighborhood, a denial is arbitrary, illegal, and capricious. Mark, these are not my arguments. These are the cases in the state of New York that govern your behavior and your activity when you have a situation where you have 2 lots that conform with the character of the neighborhood and they are already improved. And from the very beginning, it's been troublesome to me in watching these, where the 2 members who have done this before have said, what is the appropriate reaction here? Which is, there's no change to the character of the neighborhood.
John, forgive me.
Well, let me finish,
We're
please.
getting
Mark.
repetitive.
You asked me not to interrupt you. There's no change to the character of the neighborhood. The density is already there. A failure to do this would create a nonconformity, which you're not supposed to. And as your counsel told you, you're supposed to apply the state law. So I would respectfully request that you leave it open. Yes, you have to leave it open because I'm making the request, and you really can't do anything but that, absent some detriment to you, which there is none. I have to put in an appraisal from Mr. McLaughlin, who apologized. Very busy. We'll have it by the next meeting. And I also have a submission from Anthony B. Tohill who, as an expert witness.
Okay, so can I have a motion to close this?
No, not close it. We're gonna keep it open.
Okay,
I move we keep this open at the applicant's request.
that's fine.
I'll second.
Is there a second?
Aye.
And all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so let's move on to
Aye.
the case. I believe we're at case number 3081, 199 Cooper's Lane. And is there anybody here for the applicant? Is there anybody here for the applicant?
Yes, Pete De Pasquale is.
Right there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Pete DePasquale. I'm the agent for the applicant. The owner, David Walentis, is also with me at 199 Cooper's Neck Lane.
Hi, I'm David Walentis. I'm sitting next to him.
We wanted to just recap and clarify a few things that we've submitted over the course of 3 different submissions. We have a 3-acre lot on the corner of Meadowmere and Cooper's Neck Lane. The property has 3 front yards. 2 are by virtue of being on the corner condition of Meadowmere and Cooper's Neck Lane. The 3rd front yard is on the north, created by the existing historic house that was built in 1913 by the architect Grosvenor Atterbury, who was the architect of the original Parish Art Museum. The entrance to the property, the entrance to the house is on the north.
Excuse me, this is your version of a front yard? It's not a legal front yard, is that correct?
This is a front yard according to the historic character and design of the property, which is a condition of variance according to the village code. We have the entire proposal for the house to date has been planned out, knowing that this north yard was a front yard critical to the development of the property and to preserve the historic character.
I don't see how the north is a front yard.
Excuse me?
How is the north a front yard?
The entrance to the house is on the north. It is the main facade. It is the main historically significant facade on the house.
Well, excuse me, I was the head of the ARB where you presented your case.
Yes.
This was never mentioned.
Well, but it is.
No, excuse me. It's not a viable. It may have been there once, but you're not even recognizing it as your front yard.
No, we are.
We are. The entrance, the parking court, the front door are all there.
The entrance to the house, the only entrance from the outside is on the north side of the house. In the center of the house is a portico. Where
You're just calling that side of the house your front, so where your front door is, but that doesn't legally make it a front yard.
we didn't say legally.
Well, yes, you are. Okay, well then.
No, that's not correct. We're saying in terms of the historic character.
We're saying functionally, that's the front door. We didn't say legally. We said we have two side yards. Because of we have 2 front yards because of the streets, and we have 1 front yard functionally because that's the way the building was built in 1911, and that was historically the entry to the house. It always has been the entry to the house, and it always will be the entry to the house. So
doesn't make it a yard.
It's functionally the front yard for the house. Excuse me?
2 front yards is all we have. Let's not talk about a 3rd one.
2 legal front yards and 1.
2 legal and 1 functional.
And 1 that you're making up.
We're not.
It's historic. It's a historic front yard.
It's a historic house, and that's where the front door is.
Go ahead, just please move along. We understand what your point is, but for zoning purposes, we have 2 other front yards.
The owner has lived in the village for over 50 years. He's built or restored 4 houses. Lived in 3 of them. He renovated and restored the Dumbo neighborhood in Brooklyn, which was designated a landmark historic district after the work that was done there. The non-occupation of 199 Cooper's Neck Lane has been a gap tooth on the street for years. and it has been restored meticulously to preserve the character of the property and the street. The sunken tennis court proposed in the east yard will have far less of an impact than the neighboring house across the street, which has 3 accessory structures between the house and the street, including a dwelling, an apartment and garage less than 6 feet from the street. Drove by it this evening, every single light was on. It really, it's directly on the street. This is a landscape feature that will only be used during daylight hours in the summer.
It's the only location where you can have legal.
And it's the only location to have a north-south oriented tennis court on the site.
The facts of the case are, this is a 3-acre property, and you want to
Excuse me?
30 feet from the street. That's the facts of the case. That's what it comes down to. Nothing else.
Yes, so the variance that we're asking for is for the east yard to be treated as a side yard.
35 feet.
The front yard, I'm sorry.
We're asking for the east yard, which is, yeah, that's right.
The east yard is Cooper's Neck Lane, correct?
Yes, one of them.
There's a front yard on Cooper's Neck Lane and there's a front yard on Meadowmere Lane. The project has been otherwise completely as of right, meeting all setbacks. There's been no relief asked for anywhere else in the project.
Another problem because of where the house was built. The house is set back 150 feet from Meadowmere to the front of the house. So we have a very small rear yard, which is also now we're calling the front yard because that's where the entry to the house is. And that's where parking, where visitors park. And that's historically been the way the house operates. And we continue to operate it. The plan that we submitted and we're building recognizes that historic use of the property, and we're continuing it.
But you did expand the house to the east, didn't you?
We expanded the house to the east where there was a pool. We moved the pool to the front yard on Meadowmere, but we didn't violate the 90-foot setback, and we replaced the pool with an addition. An addition, yes.
Right.
As of right.
Right, exactly, which resulted in the tennis court being closer to the street.
Yes, but not closer than the 35-foot setback required for a side yard.
Right, but it's not a side yard.
Well, you're right. We don't have a side yard. We have 3 front yards. 2 plus
1 historic front yard.
So that's our problem. And that site that we are requesting the variance for is the only site on the 3-acre site that we can build a north-south conforming tennis court. There is no other site, regardless of orientation, that can do that.
We could not find in the immediate neighborhood any other front yard tennis courts. I don't think you could either. The closest I think you found was 100 Great Plains was a front yard tennis court.
That's right. That is an at-grade tennis court, very close to the street, completely exposed, and it's just around the corner.
Now, I can tell you,
it's in the historic district.
30 years ago, I restored the house at Captain's Neck and Great Plains. It was a corner lot. We bought it it was the old Clyde house. It was a total wreck. We had 2 front yards. We filed for a tennis court. We got delayed for months and months because the neighbor next door had connections with the board, and we finally forced them to make a decision. They turned it down. We went to court, and the court ordered them to give us a tennis court. It was arbitrary and capricious. It's on the corner of Great Plains and Captain's Neck.
I was on the board at that time. And I don't remember any neighbor who had influence with the board. No one
Well-
ever had influence with this board, and I kind of resent that statement.
Okay, we were told that,
I don't know who
And-
told you that.
well, it may or may not be true.
Not true.
Okay, I hope it's not true this time. But one of the neighbors said that they didn't receive notice, and we
provided the board with all of the mailing list and
we have a-
receipts for all the mailings.
we have a receipt that they received the notice, and with the things that we sent to the board disappeared from the folder. So I don't know.
We got a call today from the building department saying that there was no record of such a mailing, even though it was submitted on Monday. It was removed from the folder. We don't know why.
No, I spoke with the building department secretary. They did forward me the affidavits. It was the actual receipts weren't attached to them. They had been submitted in a separate submission. That's what was missing from the affidavit.
Okay.
But they were submitted separately in a separate submission that the building department secretary did locate. Those notices do appear all to be proper. They would not have received it prior to the work session. So that's why they hadn't received notice, because they were mailed in a timely fashion, but they wouldn't have received it prior to the work session. So
Yeah, they were mailed prior to the previous public hearing.
the prior,
Yes. Yes.
Were they mailed in the 10-day period of posting? What are you saying?
they were mailed in the proper time.
Okay,
There were letters received from neighbors that they were not notified properly, and we provide documentation that they were.
So, okay, I don't know whether any of you have visited the property. We've spent over a year now restoring it. We think we've done a spectacular job to restore a historic property. I'm doing it because that's what I do. I'm out here, I'm retired. I needed a project. So this was my project. I'm not gonna live there. As I said, my wife died and it has 11 bedrooms and I don't need that house, but we're very proud of it. We invite you all to stop by and see what a great job we've done. Anyway, I don't know what else. Are there any questions?
Do any board members have any questions? Is there anybody from the public that wants to be heard on this?
No, no public comment.
We heard from the public last time, I mean.
Does any board member have any questions?
No, I think it just comes down to this fact, the tennis court is in the wrong location. I think
Well-
if the tennis court 35 feet from that street, a lot of that street is not developed yet. And there'll be developments and they'll come in and say, wait a minute, you give these guys a tennis court 35
But
feet.
this is for historic reasons. We're asking for this relief for historic reasons, that a new house can't have the same argument.
And
They will, believe me, they
a
will.
new house also won't have their front door in their backyard, which makes it a front yard functionally. And that's the way the house was built. I don't know why. There was probably additional acreage to it 100 years ago. I can't comment to that. But the entry to the house was off of Cooper's Neck. The driveway came in and the parking was directly in front of the house where we have it in our plan. And that's the historic location of the entry. The entry to the house is right there in the middle on the north side of the house.
Driveways still come in off of Cooper's Farm Lane.
It comes in, the driveway comes in off of Cooper's Nest, yes. Where it always came in.
Okay.
So I don't know, you'll have to decide. And we hope you'll see it our way, and if not, we'll take the next step.
Okay.
Mr. Relentis, I'd just like to say that I thought you did a commendable job of restoring the house.
Thank you. Thank you. We really, it's spectacular. Even I'm impressed.
Agreed.
Really, really. Every time I go there now, because it was really a mess. That house was abused for at least the last 50 years. It was made into a 2-family house. There were garage doors where the kitchen is. I mean, it was really a 2-family house. It was terrible. Anyway, we
What do you guys want to do? Do you guys want to close it for decision, or?
we want to close for decision, because you're either going to turn us down or you're not, but we're not going to change anybody's mind. So thank you very much. I love Southampton, and I'm gonna be here either way. Thank you.
Thank you.
A motion
Thank you.
for decision?
Yeah, do I have a motion to close this for decision?
I move we close this application for decision.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so we go to case number 3083, Donna Zilka, 28 Raymond's Lane.
Yes, 1 second.
Who's here for that?
William Steinbrecher is coming in.
He's the attorney, I believe,
The architect.
He's the architect.
or the architect.
Oh, and Donna Zilka wants to come in as well. I'm sorry. Good. Okay. They're in.
Jolie, is Evelyn Conrad here as well?
No.
I didn't see her name up, but I think that she is, or she was. I don't see her on the, yes, she is. Hold on. Okay, she's coming in as well. Okay, everyone is in, I believe.
Okay, does the applicant want to speak first?
Do I?
Oops, sorry, I was already unmuted. How are you tonight, board? The only thing we have nothing new, so we were looking to close the application tonight and get a decision on the project, unless you have any questions for us, or.
No, I think we're good. We're going to listen to Evelyn this evening, and then
As soon as I can find it.
Evelyn, would you like to address the board?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, fine. I do have objections to this particular variance because it is part of a subdivision. I have provided you with the official maps of the subdivision. I hope you've had a chance to look at them. As it happens, Donna Zilka's property is in the exact same portion of the subdivision where our objections are. And the first map, which goes back to 1960 when that subdivision was approved by the planning board of the village, shows that we are all in that same neighborhood, which doesn't really matter, but I'm just saying it for your convenience. In a subdivision, the rights of the owners are spelled out by New York state law, and that New York state law has been violated quite consistently in our neighborhood, in our subdivision. But apart from that, Donna's deed, which is exactly the same as mine and as Fred Weinford's, whose picture I see there, and that has restrictive covenants, which are consistent and continuing. And there is also the common plan and scheme of that subdivision, which would be violated by your giving consent to this variance. Besides, as I said, you are going according to a local code, which is the zoning code, and we are protected by state law. Just to put things in terms of intuitively obvious, which a professor of mine used to say when he'd say something that I knew I would never understand, it's intuitively obvious that if a new zoning code brought by every new mayor could kill a subdivision, there wouldn't be any subdivisions. So this subdivision is protected by constitutional law of private property rights and by New York state law. I've given you a copy of one of the one of the statutory protections that we have, and I've given you some case law. At any rate, this is far from ready for your decision. And I at least ask you to please, further, may I say, Mr. Greenwald, I'm so impressed with your consideration of the consequences of your decisions. I think it's wonderful. I wish that were consistent. And I ask you all to consider what has happened to our subdivision because of some of the violations of the last 15 years. If you would all just take a walk through there, I'd be glad to do a buffet lunch in the yard. I don't have any extra structures, so we could socially distance in my backyard and still have a lunch there. Look at the neighborhood and see what you think. You are doing damage to it if you admit this. A small personal item. I was driving out from my place and trying to go to Hill Street yesterday and very nearly got a car crashing into mine, going across the curb that had always been dangerous, which I warned everybody about. But now it's more dangerous because we have arborvitae circling 58 Roscoe Drive. And it used to be open lawns. Talk about change of the character of the neighborhood. But it is not lost yet.
Oh.
So here I am fighting for it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Fred Weinfurt also came in. I'm not sure if he's looking to be heard, but he raised his hand. He's in as a.
You're welcome.
I would like to be, please. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Am I on?
Yes,
You're on, Fred, you're on.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Fred Weinfurt, I reside at 45 Roscoe Drive. The suggestion that a variance should be granted here because there is a pre-existing non-conforming violation on the old structure should not be given any consideration. The old house is being removed and they will be starting with a clean slate, a vacant lot. The old violation will be gone. The proposed structure, including the attached garage, will total 3,896 square feet, an increase of 79% over the old structure. This structure will look extremely and will be extremely large on this property, as it will be 17 feet wider than the current zoning law allows, and will be out of character with our neighborhood. We have our zoning code to prevent, among other things, the overdevelopment of property. Again, this will be a vacant lot, a clean slate, once the old house is removed. Therefore, the new house should conform to zoning. There is no hardship here other than the one self-imposed by the applicant wanting to build a house that is too big for the lot. They should be required to scale back the size of the structure so that it will conform to current zoning. This should be a very easy decision, and I hope you will make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jolie, is there anybody else that wishes to be heard?
No.
Do any board members have any questions?
No,
No. Can I have a motion to close this decision?
I move we close this application for decision.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Are you all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next case we have is case number 3087, 71 Walnut Street. Jolie, is the applicant here that wants
Yeah,
to address the board?
One moment, I have to take the current ones out. One moment, please. Okay, yes, Gil Flanagan and Lisa Zaloga are present. Okay.
Look at that. Oh, they look really old there. Jesus.
Okay, you guys are in.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, yeah, this case has been heard 2 or 3 times already, and I think we're just about at the end of it. The last time, you may recall that we were to submit some amended plans which would remove the shower from the proposed garage building and to show the location of the pool, the hot tub equipment. And also there was a legend on one of the drawings which showed a pool house, which it was inadvertently left on from the last submission. Unfortunately, we weren't able to submit those drawings in time for the work session, but they were submitted shortly thereafter and they should be in the file. It seems to me that those were really the only open issues that we had remaining. And if there are any questions, we'd be happy to try to address them.
Do any board members have any questions? Julia, do you have any questions?
Not at this time. I have not had the opportunity to see the drawings that Mr. Flanagan just identified were submitted.
Would you like me to share my screen and show them to you, or?
That would be helpful, Lisa. Yeah, it's, sure.
Can you see them?
Yep.
So the revision was primarily just that we removed the shower and just created a closet in the bathroom for storage. There's still a door to the bathroom so that you'll be able to go from the hot tub and use the facilities, but that's all that's there. There's no shower.
So Lisa, what is that room? I mean, what is the room that's next to the car? Because it looks like a house to me.
Well, yeah, you have to remember that, well, I don't know that you know, this is an old house, there's no real basement to this house.
Yep.
So this will be storage for any of the outdoor furniture, anything that's needs to be stored, and she's looking for storage as well as for the garage for the car.
So is this, it's 10 by what? The storage room that you're, that this
10
thing
by
is.
9, I think.
Mark 10 by 10. Is it 10
by
by 10?
9'8", 10 by 9'8", yep.
I just feel as though I've lived in less square footage than this. I mean, literally, it looks like a house to me. It looks like a home with a car in it.
I don't know what, I mean, it's not heated. It's not, it's has no cooking facilities. It doesn't conform to anything that makes it habitable space in any way.
Well, if there's, I just have a couple of questions because I'm really trying to understand it on the fly. But if it's got plumbing, it's got to have some heating, right?
No, you drain them. You drain them at the, in the winter. You drain the water lines.
But then you couldn't use it when you use the hot tub.
You cannot have heat in an accessory building in the village in Southampton.
I understand that. But you've marked this as now a bathroom. It's not a pool house. Is that correct?
It's not a pool house.
No, because there's no pool to go with it.
Well, that's up for grabs. There's a hot tub, right?
There's a hot tub.
It's not a pool.
by definition, a pool has to be at least 100 square feet, and this isn't.
Lisa, where's the filtration for the hot tub?
You can see it's noted right here. I put a little, little jog
Where?
in the garage, in the back of the garage. Do you want me to blow this
Hot
up more?
tub equipment is the
Yeah,
filtration.
I'm actually able to expand it happily, so I can see it better.
I put the equipment for the hot tub inside the garage so that it doesn't have to be 20 feet off the property line.
And
The
that's something.
structure itself is 22 by 22. It's actually smaller than a two-car garage.
Correct.
It's actually smaller than the building we originally proposed too, which I think we noted at the last hearing.
How much smaller is it? It's helpful just to know that. I'm sorry that I'm having to do this on the fly with you. I just haven't had the chance.
I believe that are you looking for a square footage? This one's now 484 square feet. And when we started, I believe it was 516, which the maximum size could be 520. I didn't put that comparison up, I don't think.
At the last meeting, there was a comparison chart submitted, which had all those
Right.
figures on them. It is definitely smaller.
So it went from, I believe it was 516 to 484.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, right. Okay.
Do any other board members have questions?
No, I think I've heard enough on this application.
Okay, I mean, my concern overall, Gil and Lisa, is, you know, when we try to deliberate this as a board, we haven't been able to this point get enough support for you for all of the variances. There's certainly support for some of them. And I was giving that a great deal of thought, and I came to this realization. It's possible that what we have here is that none of the individual variance requests, you know, are particularly objectionable, but the cumulative effect of 4 variances that infringe upon a front yard may become just too much. We haven't had, you know, an opportunity in our work session to see where exactly the vote will come out, but past attempts have indicated that the cumulative effect of 4 variances just may not get a consensus vote. So my question for both of you is, which of these variances are the most important? Which can you live without, and which are priority?
I'm not sure we want to make that decision now, but there's one thing I want to point out to you as a matter of technicality. We're not asking for front yard variance relief, but with one exception, which is the setback from Walnut Street for the vestibule. What we're seeking there is, what we're seeking in the other cases is a street setback variance, because by definition, the proposed addition, the garage, and the hot tub are not in the definitional front yard. That means that they're further from the street than the house is, so that there's a difference. This board has recognized that.
Yes, I understand. We're not in a technical front yard, but we are infringing upon a front yard setback. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's the relief we're asking for. But the difference, and this board has always recognized a significant difference between being in the definitional front yard and needing a front yard setback. And that's what we have here.
I think you should also just take note of the fact that we're not looking for any lot coverage relief or any GFA relief. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, that there's 4 variances, but I don't think that the lot is being over compromised in any way. And, you know, I'm sure you've driven by the property, you know, the Pine Street side the trees there are extremely lush and tight together. And I don't think that you'll even notice the majority of these structures at all.
It also bears repeating, and I'll say it again, that the property most directly affected by these variances is a property on the east side of Pine Street, and you have a letter of very strong support from that property owner, whose lot, in fact, previously received a variance for a hot tub. So he's the one most directly affected. And by the way, I do not believe we've heard anything further from the neighbor to the west, presumably because we no longer are proposing a swimming pool.
You know, I mean, the structures are all, you know, one-story structures. They're all gonna basically be hidden by this, by the vegetation that's on Pine Street. I don't see how anybody on Pine Street will ever even know that there's anything in there.
No, we have to be cognizant of the fact that this application in a somewhat similar form was before us before, and it was denied. And I think I mentioned at the very beginning of this application that, you know, perhaps even then we might have been able to agree to some of the variances, but could not agree to all of the variances, and as a result, a decision was rendered, you know, of denial. So I'm asking you, and it's up to you whether or not you want to, you know, address this. But do you want to provide us with because we don't want to do it, prioritizing which variances are most important in the event that we cannot grant all 4 of them, or would you prefer us to basically just consider this as a, you know, a complete package and accept all of them or accept none of them?
Well, you know, I did this color-coded drawing for you guys where I showed you that there were actually 16 swimming pools. We're not asking for a swimming pool, and that there were 35 detached accessory structures that were, you know, detached garages. Most of them are, you know, kind of pre-existing non-conforming and closer to the property lines than what our structure is going to be. So could I turn that around on you and ask you what ones do you have? You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the problem is for any of them really at this point, just by virtue of the character of the neighborhood.
Individually, there's not a problem with them. It's the cumulative effect of all 4 of them. And you can look at other property examples or other variance requests, but, you know, this is an expansion of the existing house. This is the addition of a garage with a bathroom and storage. And, you know, it's the addition of a hot tub. And I mean, you're right. You can find cases in the neighborhood that would suggest that 1 or more of them could be granted, but perhaps not all of them.
But I would submit, where is it written that that's one of the factors that you have to consider that one variance is worse than or better than another? I think you have to look at each one on it as it stands on its own. There's nothing in the code, or nothing in the state law that says that is one of the standards, especially when the nature of the relief being sought is, in our opinion, relatively minor, because we are not in the definitional front yard with the exception of the vestibule on Walnut Street. So I think you really should look at each one on its own. And as you know, the initial case that Mark referred to is currently under review by the state Supreme Court, and that's one of the things I think that's being looked at. So I would suggest that you look at each variance on its own merits.
Mark, in the past, I mean, I've seen many properties that have multiple variances that have been issued over the years. And I always kind of felt that this board liked to kind of see everything all at once so that you had a full picture of the property. So this kind of takes me by surprise because I've never been asked that kind of a question before.
Well, I was looking at your plan of the swimming pools. I don't see a lot of front yard swimming pools in here.
There's no swimming pool here.
We don't have a swimming pool. We have a hot tub, and it's
Okay,
not in the
pool.
front yard either.
Lisa, if you could show on the map right diagonally across the street from this property, there is a hot tub which received a variance.
Right, that hot tub right there.
And this board has in the past treated hot tubs slightly differently from the way it treats swimming pools. And again, one of the,
what is the hot tub doing out in the middle of the hot tub you're showing me has a building attached to it, no?
No, it doesn't. It's free. It's totally freestanding.
There's also a swimming pool down here on the corner of Meeting House Lane and Pine Street that is a very similar situation in that the house is actually closer to Pine Street. However, the swimming pool is, in the same general setback as what we're proposing for the hot tub. That also has a detached garage, and that house is in the same general location with respect to Pine Street as our house is.
So how did they get that?
Isn't it a much larger space, the lot?
The lot is larger, but they have a swimming pool. They have a house that is it looks to me from the aerial almost the same setback from Pine Street as what ours is.
But it's a much bigger situation.
Well, it's a bigger house. It's a bigger house and a bigger lot, but that goes back to the fact that we're not actually asking for any lot coverage or gross floor area relief. So our house is in fact smaller, and the structures are smaller based just by virtue of the fact that we're not asking for any relief for those things.
And this is the house that went from a two-family back to a one-family, correct?
Correct.
That's part of our proposal. That's right.
This is part of it. Hasn't actually been granted that it's reduced to one family?
We have offered that. We've offered that.
What is the status?
It's currently a two-family home.
And as part of the project, to remind you again, we would be installing one of the new IA systems in compliance with the health department requirements, which will fit as of right without any relief from the health department.
And we will give up the two-family status and go back to a single-family residence.
And Mark, I don't think the cumulative effect of these four variants is that big of an impact. I think that everything sort of fits appropriately on the property. It's not like they're jamming the property full of stuff. They're adding a garage, a small kitchen addition, and a little hot tub and a cover for the front porch. It's not like, I don't see them asking for the world here.
But it's a small area. The whole thing's small, which is kind of very charming, but.
Do any of you remember what this property looked like maybe 3 or 4 years ago?
I don't think that has bearing on this. I'm sorry, Mr. Flanagan. We're just trying to do the zoning.
No, I think it's important to know that what we're trying to achieve here. And I think that what the client has done is to try to make these additions harmonious with and consistent with the general upgrading of this property. Seems to me she's done a pretty good job of it. She certainly has listened to the complaints and concerns that people have voiced. And I really think we've done a good job of addressing those concerns.
One of the comments that has arisen, Gil, is that the storage and bathroom is more a change in name rather than anything else. It's still a quote unquote pool house.
What would you have us do to convince you that it's not? First of all, it can't be a pool house because by definition, there is no pool. So what would you have us do to address that? If that's a concern, what would you have us do to address it?
Take off the glass doors and put in barn doors for the storage room.
Bear in mind, there was a concern, maybe it looks like a house.
The two doors, are those? That's the only thing you could do to make it not look like a storage room. If those two doors that face the house are just solid doors, then it's a storage room.
Well, I mean, if you took out the bathroom, quite frankly, it would look to me less like a pool house. And I understand what you're saying, Gil. There's no pool, so it can't be a pool house. This is an
But
unusual.
there's also, I mean, bathrooms and garages are extremely common in the village. It's not something that turns into a pool house in any way.
So I guess, Lisa, my question would be, if you didn't have the spa, would you still want the bathroom and sink in the garage?
I would say yes. I can't specifically answer, but I mean, I would say yes.
Piping hot gumbo.
I'm sorry?
Kevin, what did you say?
I was going to vote on this one. I would definitely vote aye. I think they've made enough changes to satisfy us.
Are there any more questions, or do we want to close it for decision?
I say close it for decision.
Agreed.
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 Okay. Can I have a motion to close it for decision?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, so we're going to close for decision case number 3087, 71 Walnut Street, LLC.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, can you take over for the next case, number 3088, Akiva Goldsman?
Yes. This is the walkway down to the Dug Lagoon, I believe. Is there anybody here for this application?
Can you raise your hand if you're present for this application? For Akiva Goldsman, please raise your hand. Last time was Jim Walker. Not sure who's here. Is anyone present for Akiva Goldsman? Please raise your hand so I can bring you in. I don't see a hand.
I think we should listen to Chick on this one.
Okay.
Sure. Yes, so Kevin, this is that small recreational catwalk for water access at the Dug Lagoon. We had heard this, and I had requested a couple of changes to the plan. None of which really changed the function or layout of the project. It was more nomenclature and confirming the through-flow decking and the pathway to the dock. And we did discuss it at a work session as well. So I have no further questions on this. You know, it's I don't think there are any major concerns about it, but certainly happy to entertain any questions.
Well, I read through your, what you wrote, you know, I guess your decision that you wrote in, and it seems like you covered all the points in what you have written up.
Yeah, just based on work session and the fact that there were no outstanding questions and it was a fairly minor activity, I did send around a draft decision if you wanted to consider it for tonight or close it and do it at a future meeting.
Chick, I'm sorry, I didn't see, if you've sent something, I haven't seen it. Did it just come today?
Yes, it was this afternoon. My apologies for that. And we're going to be getting out any draft decisions much earlier in the future.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've been out all afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to review anything.
You want to close it for the decision, Kevin, and then whenever everybody will have a chance to read over Chick's.
We close the decision, that'll give the others a chance to read what Chick did.
Very good. So I'll update it.
Okay.
Sorry, Kevin. I'll update it with a new date for the next meeting and we'll have it well in advance.
All right, so we need a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, Mark.
Okay, so we are on to case number 3089, Meadowmere Partners, 66 Meadowmere Lane. Chick, did you want to address this?
Sure. So this is, I'm just going to bring up a graphic if you give me 1 second. See if I can share my screen. Well, I seem to be having a little difficulty. I don't know if Mr. Walker is here for this one today. He had presented previously.
I don't see him in the attendee list.
Okay, because I did have some questions for him, and if he's not here, I won't be able to ask those questions.
So why don't we just hold this over then and keep it open for the next meeting?
Can you try to contact him, Chick, between now and then and see when you ask him the questions?
Yeah, this is the one that was the, I'll call it a ditch. It was dominated by Japanese knotweed and Phragmites that runs down the west side of the 66 Meadowmere property. And Jim had provided some additional details. There were really no details at the last meeting, but it still gave rise to some questions. So I would be happy to contact him directly, see if we can get some more information and present it fully at the next meeting.
I thought he said that he had to deal with Suffolk County and then he would come back. Is that correct?
Yeah, he said he was in discussion with DEC, who would have to permit this. And I imagine there must have been some input because he said he was waiting for that. And then after the last hearing, he did resubmit a plan. There are some outstanding questions more on methodology, the amount of material that has to be removed in terms of taking out the ditch, on those types of things. So based on the suggestion, I'm happy to reach out to him directly.
Uh-oh. Knocked out.
What,
Yes,
Kevin?
Kevin.
We can see you, Kevin.
Wants me to update to Zoom 5.0.
Oh,
If I update, is that gonna knock me out or what?
definitely. See if you can
I
just
wouldn't do that.
say later for now and do it after the meeting is over.
Yeah, I would not accept that at the moment.
No, I'm not gonna accept it. I don't know how to get out of it.
Is it in the middle of your screen, Kevin? Is there an
Yep.
X in the top left or right of your screen?
Check.
Decline. You want to decline it.
Yeah, there's no way I can decline it. Doesn't give me.
Can
We
you
can
take
see
the
you, so
mouse
you're
and just
fine.
move it off
Just
to the
leave it.
side?
Nope.
Can you see anything? Can you see us?
Nope.
Oh, I think that the screen that you're on with the,
Wait a minute. Maybe I can get rid of it this way. There it goes. Now I'm completely gone.
No, that's Chick showing us his screen.
Now I'm back to my where I shouldn't be. I'm gonna have to see if I can get back in. I'm hitting the panelist.
is there another screen behind the one that's asking you the question?
Yeah, because we can see and hear you as if nothing's changed.
Oh, now I'm back.
Good.
Great.
We
Excellent.
missed you. Glad you're back.
Thank you.
Wow, is it windy?
So, where are we? We're going to
So
adjourn.
we're moving on to case number 309. Oh, wait, we're going to close 3089 for all purposes.
No, adjourn.
Adjourn.
I'm sorry. We're going to adjourn it for all purposes.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're now going to case number 3090, Matthew and Susan Hamlin, 144 Powell Avenue.
On this, don't we?
We do. We have to keep it open because we need to know if anybody from the public wants to be heard.
Susan Hamlin would like to be heard. Can I bring her in?
Sure.
Okay.
I just thought I was supposed to say that I'm here. Apologies.
Oh.
Jolie, is anybody from the public here that wants to be heard?
Anyone want to be heard on this application of Matthew and Susan Hamlin? I don't see any hand. No.
Okay, David, can you guide us then? Do we close it and then reopen it for decision, or?
No, you're closing the public hearing portion and then just adopting the decision independent of that. So
But
you do
there's-
need to close the public hearing and then have a discussion as needed on the decision and adopt that if you're so inclined.
I move we close this application.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, did everybody have a chance to review the decision?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the decision as written on case number 3090, Matthew and Susan Hamlin, 144 Powell Avenue?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We can,
Good luck.
good luck. So we'll go to case number 3091, George Petty, 117 Elm Street.
We have a decision on this one too.
Yeah, so we're gonna, Jolie, is anybody here from the public? That
Yeah.
wants to be heard?
Jennifer Leeds is coming in. And Christopher Wall.
Jolie, do you know if anybody other than the applicant?
I don't see the applicant. I have Christopher Wall is in.
Jennifer Lee.
George couldn't make it on. He had a conference call.
And I believe that Jennifer Leeds is on as well, no?
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Okay.
So we're really here, George and Jennifer, just to see if there's anybody from the public that wants to be heard. Otherwise, we're going to close the public hearing and then we have a decision ready.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Jolie, there's nobody from the public that wants to be heard?
I don't believe no one has their hand up.
Great. Then can I have a motion to close the public hearing for decision?
I move we close this hearing for decision.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and then we have a written decision drafted by David Kirst. Did everybody have a chance to review the decision, and are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I move we approve this decision as written.
I'll
second.
second. All in favor of approving the decision as written in case number 3091, George Petty, 117 Elm Street?
Aye.
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 Is that unanimous?
Well, we haven't heard your aye yet, but
Aye. It's unanimous.
okay.
Okay, let's move on to new cases then. Case number 3093.
Thank you, board.
Go
Very
for it.
Case number 3093, new cases. Oh, wait, I skipped one and I knew I would. Because we moved the Flying Point case. So we have 131 Flying Point Realty.
Yep.
That's the next case on the agenda.
085.
Yes, Robert Fischette is here for the applicant.
Okay, let's bring on Robert.
He's being promoted right now.
He's muted.
Hello, Robert Fischetti for the applicant. I have with me on the Zoom here my client Richard Sarcona, as well as the architects Highland Hall and Brett Rothamel. So if I could possibly share my screen, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm just getting a little pushback here. Oh, here it is. Okay.
Oh, so he's bringing that in. Nice.
All right, I'm having a little trouble with this sharing. I'm just gonna, unless you can you see it?
We can see the
Oh,
aerial
also,
view.
I'm sorry, my computer was a little late telling me. Okay, so I just wanted to be able to visualize while I'm speaking as to where we're talking about. Again, we're requesting a 59.5 foot principal front yard setback off of Downs Path where 80 feet is required. It's a 1.7 acre lot with 2 front yards. As you can see, it's 125 feet wide on Flying Point, which is an important point because it really constricts the lot. We're presently approved by a house, a pool, and a tennis court. The garage, as you'll see in some photos that we previously submitted, is actually underneath the house at this point, which eats in significantly to the square footage. Since the application was reopened on November 5th, we submitted to the board a survey with some topographical data, some photos of the subject property, and then a section of the town GIS map, just trying to show the footprint of some neighboring properties. Also on November 17th, we submitted 6 diagrams prepared by the architect Highland Hall, who he'll walk you through those in just a moment. But just as on the broader sense, this application, the variance that we're requesting, we don't see it as causing any change to the character of this neighborhood. It's 79.3 feet off of the Downs Path is the existing house. We're asking for a 20-foot difference, which would be screened by vegetation and topography. There's a significant rise. The next property up Downs Path is a baseball field. The property across the street, 20 Downs Path, gave us a letter of support. They are a much different setup across at 20 Downs Path, the other corner lot, which I'll get back to in a moment. We don't view this as a substantial variance. As we noted earlier, in the first hearing, it's 25% relief, which based on the history of this board is not been considered substantial. It's again only 20 feet, which would be shielded. There's no physical or environmental impact. We're talking about 20 feet between an existing footprint and the road. What really here is our difficulty, as I mentioned earlier, which is not self-created, is the narrow width of the lot. R80 requires 80 feet of frontage. We only have about 122.5. We're mostly a rectangular lot that does come out in the back where the tennis court is. Again, the tennis court is fixed. It's really in the only spot that makes sense. We don't have any plans to move that. Using the 80-foot setback on Downs Path, that would only leave us with a 55-foot wide as of right building envelope. By comparison, 115 Flying Point just to the west is about 150 feet wide, and they are also only dealing with the 1 front yard. 20 Downs Path on the other side across on the corner is a much different shaped lot. What we lose in being sort of bowed in, they're bowed out. They have about 190 feet in the middle, which gives them the room to orient the house on Downs Path and still have the depth necessary to build appropriately on there. But where the hardship hits us on this one is the garage. So in the present house, the garage is underneath the house. In the proposed house, this additional space that we're looking for is really to accommodate not having the garage below the house. We're looking to have the garage. Number one, the house, we're already, as you can see on the aerial, and it's notably a smaller house. The proposed house is going to be bigger, but still only 5,500 square feet, which on a 1.7 acre lot is a modest size. At losing the basement and losing the potential of a finished basement by having most of it taken up by a garage, which would be a big hardship to the property and to the applicant to be able to to realize as much square footage as would be appropriate given the size of the lot and the neighborhood and the caliber of the property. On the south side, as I said, we have the tennis court, and the swimming pool was moved a little further back on the proposed to make a little bit more room. On the west, we are at the 25-foot setback, so there's really not any room for any change. Any relief there would have much more of an impact than the relief we're asking for. On the north, since we are talking about available building envelope, the board understandably noted at the previous meeting that, you know, we're not using what is some of the as of right building envelope towards Flying Point. On November 5th, as I said, we submitted some topo data that shows there's a steep drop off right at the end of what's now the current parking area. Goes from about 28 feet to down above sea level to about 13 feet at Flying Point Road. So pretty significant drop. There's also vegetation there that we plan to keep in place if we don't have to shift you know, the whole development forward closer to Flying Point. As you can see here on the aerial, the sort of established streetscape is where this house is now, which is also roughly where the proposed house would be. If we were to slide the house you know, forward in the building, in the as of right building envelope, that would put the house hypothetically where this parking area is now. Would also create issues as to where we would put the parking, but it would cut pretty strongly against the established streetscape. No one at this point is really even close to that 80 feet next door, and it would force us to have retaining walls and take out this this vegetation. Which would be a problem. It would leave the house sitting, you know, basically on this plateau where the parking area is now, and sort of hanging over Flying Point Road for lack of a better word. Whereas the proposed plan, I should say, would preserve that vegetation. It would set the house back more in line with, or really in line with the streetscape, with where the other houses are, would allow for some space for suitable parking. I think it would be much more palatable to the ARB to have the house and the configuration set up, you know, to be at the current or approximate setback that the other houses are. So we think that those, you know, those hardships really leave us with, you know, a limited area to achieve the benefit that we're trying to achieve. I want to sort of pass off to Highland Hall, the architect, to get a little further into detail as to the options that he looked at. We have some diagrams that we submitted that he's going to walk through as to the different variations that they considered and how they really got to the design that we've proposed. So I can let go of my screen share here. Actually, I just want to show you very quickly before I pass off to Highland, the photos that we submitted. It really does show the significant drop off in the topo on the side as well, and by Downs Pass, so it sort of goes down and then back up, which is another thing that they have to contend with in finding a suitable spot for this. So I'm going to stop sharing. So I can pass off to Highland and Brett to give some more detail about what they've proposed here.
Good evening, everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Very good. My name is Highland Hall Turner, for the record. I'm a third generation architect. Undergraduate degree from Cornell University. Continuance education at the GSD at Harvard. I have spent a majority of my life in the state of architecture, given the fact that both my father and grandfather were practicing architects in New York City and Long Island. And I'm assuming that because of my familiarity and the length of my duration working in New York, that I would be an acceptable professional witness in this case. Further to that, I maintained an office in New York City until 1996. And then at that point, moved the crew out to New Jersey. I was in fear of getting across the Hudson River, but I made that journey in favor of my new family. I think the other important part of this, I was requested to look at this particular piece of property and discuss the design alternatives that were imposed on this site because of some serious restrictions as well as hardships, as I would call it, in relationship to this site in particular. I think Robert made a couple of points. I won't belabor that, and I will try to make this as brief as I can. I would like to sort of walk through by paraphrasing the diagrams, which kind of state the case, so to speak, and do it in a succession of illustrating the concepts, both of the detriment because of the restrictions on this site, as well as the contemplation of the development of a house on this site. I hope that will suffice. Diagram 1 illustrates, it's very straightforward, the aspect that landowners are often put in a position where because of the configuration of the lot and other aspects as topography, create a difficult hardship to create a home that's consistent with the neighborhood, so to speak. So I'd like to go to diagram 2. Are you guys following along, or did you have an opportunity to review the diagrams?
We've seen
Yes, I believe we have, but go ahead.
Okay, great. Diagram 2 illustrates the site constraints that Robert put forth previously. Given one of the more restrictive aspects is the front yard facing Flying Point Road. In the R80 district, as I understand it, the minimum lot width along the road is 200 feet. In this case, we have 122.5 feet of lot width along Flying Point Road. This turns into the restriction on the thinner part of that site, which legitimately is the front yard along that road. Given the setback, it restricts that part of the building envelope to approximately 55 feet. The other aspect that I'd like to mention is the front yard setback along Downs Path that's required to be 80 feet, condensing the entire sliver of space in the longitudinal direction from relatively north to south along the site. Currently, the site on the southern east border in the rear, and you guys may know this property very, very well, is used for recreational purposes. And there's tennis court, pool, and a variety of other enjoyment of the property. If one wants to make a preposition that this site, there was an adjacent property that replaced Downs Road, just this illustrates the fact that there would be a 40-foot setback in that location. That's no justification. That is just pointing out that a normal site that would have a lot adjacent to it would be allowed to have about 40 feet of setback. Diagram 3, topographic issues along with this site. The diagram issues very simply the topographical impairment to the site all the way from Flying Point Road up the driveway, and then a relatively steep grade to get up to what I refer to as the plateau, where the front of the house is currently located. The grade in this case is about 8.5. So it is slightly below the maximum 10% requirement for sensible drive courts. But still, it is a difficult task to modulate a house on the top of that little plateau. We'll go on to diagram 4. The next two diagrams illustrate the aspects of another orientation or perhaps another design alternative that could work within the frontage given at that buildable area of 55 feet. The first diagram illustrates an L-shaped building, if you will. Inevitably, these kind of buildings, the projection, because of the access of the driveway, is normally used as a garage. I'm not sure about you guys, but my architectural opinion is that having intrusion of a garage facing the front primary entry to the site is detrimental not only to the common good of the neighborhood, but it's really used as a device when lots are restricted in overall widths. We've all noticed many of those that are very common in Florida, where you have 60-foot lots and they jam the garage into the front, and there's about 20 feet left of the front entry of a building. Creating this kind of building on this lot, in my opinion, would be contrary to the streetscape as well as many of the other properties along Flying Point Road. Further, it creates a congestion up on that plateau, and the actual drive itself, an entry to that area, is minimized. So the overall length of the frontage of the house would be about 36 feet or so, once you have a 24-foot or 22-foot, whatever you'd like, garage appended to the front of a residence. Diagram 5 illustrates a building negotiated on the site in the north-south direction, with the only possible way of really accessing this would be from Downs path. But either way, it's a diagram representing what happens with a linear building placed in what could possibly be the only other orientation for a building on this long linear building envelope. That even if the building is pushed all the way to the setback line of 80 feet on the Downs path setback, the maximum possible backyard that someone would have is about 50 feet. Of course, you could make appendages to those and do an H shape. The long and the short of that device precludes the front yard setback from Flying Point Road and literally shows the side of the house to Flying Point. And this is an architectural aspect that I'm looking at in relationship to the streetscape along the primary road of Flying Point. The other thing it does is it's a little bit contrary to the overall scheme of the property, because the side of the house, or what would be considered the south, which would be the southern portion of the house, legitimate would be, even though it is considered a legal rear yard, would be actually the side of the house that would have to sort of make use of the tennis court and the pool, et cetera, et cetera. Not the most efficient way for the development of this property, where you would like as much of the recreation area behind the house for the enjoyment of the occupants. Third and last, D6 represents a footprint that has been illustrated for the footprint of a residence, requesting the garage to be placed within the setback and relief of that, so the garage can be appended to the side of the residence, very customary to many of the residences along Flying Point Road. And in that, we are requesting approximately the relief of about 20.5 feet from that setback, that setback from Downs Point. I think the other thing to consider in this kind of thing, and I'm sure this was done, and I hear there is a board member that is very familiar with this residence, is what I call the pit that it currently was devised to create a drive under the house. And again, this is what one is viewing from as you pass by from Flying Point Road. Not the most aesthetic thing. And the other thing that I find a little difficult to understand is the recontouring that had to happen to make this a viable solution, when in fact those walls are structures in themselves, even though retaining walls are allowed within setback areas. So this particular plan would attempt to redevelop that and recontour the property as currently is shown in more of a natural slope, and integrate that side of the house within the flow and eliminate the pit, as I call it. I believe this is a much more satisfactory solution. And of course, that in order for that design to be accomplished, we are requesting the relief of 20.5 feet along the setback line at Downs Path. That concludes, as briefly as I could, the documents that we had prepared for you. And I would only ask that you consider this carefully. And if you have any questions, please fire away.
Do any board members have some questions? So here's my question, because I appreciate you taking us through some alternatives. As an experienced architect, as a Cornell graduate, which I appreciate, my alma mater.
So I have a friend on the board.
You had a grandfather and a father on the board who has some children that went to Cornell.
All right, okay, I'm doing well so far.
You came into this, I think, you were not the architect who prepared the original plans.
That's correct.
But you're coming in now as a consultant. So here's the question. If you were given this site as it's going to be prior to the construction of this new residence, it will be a clean slate. There'll be nothing on it. The house will be removed. And if the owner said to you, the village doesn't like to grant front yard variances, they'd like to protect the integrity of the zoning code. Can you design a house for me that would be attractive, practical, enjoyable, and not violate or not infringe upon the front yard setback? Would you be able to do that?
Mark, that is the elephant on the table, isn't it? I think the two other illustrations that I had in diagrams previously sort of attempt to explain what the deficiencies are in those two practical arrangements, given the setbacks and the constriction of the site on that northern border. You know, it's also one of those things that's a little bit of a catchphrase. You know, I can make anything look good, but it's how the residence responds given the actual constraints on that site. And I was hoping that those two diagrams sort of illustrated the aspects of what could be possible, but also showed the detrimental aspects of the site with those two orientations.
Right. No, I agree. Those proposed two concepts that if I were working with you as my architect, I might say, let's not do that. But we don't want to violate the front yard setback. Do you have anything else? Because I don't think you're going to be I'm posing this as a hypothetical. I think we're going to have trouble obtaining a front yard variance. We think it is substantial, 25%. Could you design something?
Well, Mark, as I said, yes, you can design a house on that, but it would have deficiencies in relationship to the overall use of the property.
I think we could say
And-
that about any house or, any application. You could always say you can build that smaller. I think there is something to be said for building commensurate with the size of the neighborhood, commensurate with the size of the houses around it, or commensurate with the size of this property overall. I mean, it's not totally a clean slate in that there is a tennis court that is remaining. But to say, could you fit within the setbacks? I mean, we could clear most of tonight's calendar if everyone just built within the setbacks. So I think that it has to be looked at in relation to the size of the lot, to the the size and the character of the houses around this house. To really look at that question, fairly.
To what are you referring? What houses?
The houses right next door are much larger than I think even what we're proposing. They have a much bigger footprint. I think we're just trying to keep with the neighborhood. I think that you can always build smaller, but that's not always an appropriate development of a
Are
lot.
the lots that they aren't the same size?
No, the lots are commensurate in size, just a little bit wider, and they don't have the front yard on the side.
But
The lot along Downs Park has it's only a private drive, so they're both of the lots that are next door to this don't have the double front yard to contend with.
Rob, what we're wrestling with is just what you touched upon. The house across the street doesn't have a tennis court. You're choosing to basically clean the slate here, but retain the tennis court, and then say you also need the variance. Which is, I understand that you wouldn't want to remove that, but when you're comparing it to other houses in the neighborhood, the house across the street never asked for a tennis court, and that was a clean slate. And they just said, okay, if we want to comply with the zoning code, we'll have to eliminate our tennis court. I'm not saying that
The house on Downs Path you're talking about, that's probably about 60, might even be 60 feet deeper in the middle than this, about 190 feet wide in the middle on the opposite side on Downs Path. They have much more room to work with to center a house in the middle. Even if you were to take away this tennis court, that just slides you further back in that building. You're still in a narrow building.
Is fractionally smaller.
You're asking for 20 feet of relief from Downs Path. And I know it's a difficult lot because it's only 122 feet wide on, which creates this narrow sort of pie-shaped building envelope. But it appears to me that if you made that house a little bit wider and you pull the garage back, maybe you would only need like an 8 or a 10-foot variance, not a 20 feet, which then it was really starting to crowd onto the Downs Road side of the property, the other front yard. So, I can see the benefit to the owner versus detriment to the community, but 20 feet is a lot, so, I could see some area for a little bit of relief here, but that's asking for a lot of relief.
Good point. Could you put the aerial up again? It's so we can.
Yes. Can you see it now?
Yeah, what the aerial doesn't show is the pit where the parking area is, and that's sort of what makes that a difficult lot.
Yeah, that's here.
And that's why I could see, a need for maybe a little bit of relief, but I can't see why you wouldn't be able to design this house without requesting 20 feet of relief. I mean, it would get rid of that. That's really not attractive,
I mean, I rely on Highland to discuss the technical end of that, but I mean, the pit definitely encompasses much more than, you know, the 20 feet. I think they were trying to regain that natural slope, but I mean, I'll let Highland speak to that.
Yeah, the existing house has and not an addition, but an extrusion on the other side of the house, which is approximately 12 feet. I've taken a look at some of the elevations that could be created by adding the same amount of square, linear feet that was on the other side of the house, given the fact that if it were an addition to balance out, which is currently a colonial revival house, that kind of similar kind of addition on that side would do an enormous amount to expanding the linear aspects of the house, facing that, and also, you can make it work, but the idea of getting the drive in from the side of the house, one would be forced to have the garage doors literally almost facing the Flying Point Road, which I was opposed to. Although, I believe that, the redesign could be achieved in a sensible way if there was at least a 12-foot relief, given what the existing house has on that side of Downs Path.
So you're saying that you would be able to redesign this, give them the owner of the house that they would like, with only 12 feet of request rather than 20? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that would certainly improve the possibilities of creating a gracious home. I think the concern that I have, and particularly from the streetscape, is how to develop a new home with the garage is not facing Flying Point Road. I'm not even sure that that would be necessarily acceptable from the ARB Commission. I think a majority of the homes try to develop access from the side of the house, and unfortunately, of course, this has 2 front yards, right? So you have to choose the devil, so to speak, because the same impact could be suggested along Downs Path. But because of the existing orientation to Flying Point Road, I think it's a much better solution. Some of the other houses that you see along Downs Point do have access to the garage from the side, rather than facing the garage doors toward Flying Point Road. I think many of the houses up and down the Flying Point had the similar concerns. It's just my nature to try to get the access to the garage doors away from the street side by turning them to the side and having access from the side of the residence. Oh, I know.
So Highland,
who's speaking?
It seems like you're saying, so in order to keep the house oriented towards Flying Point, which is the preferred for all the reasons that you went through,
Right.
Maybe 20 is ideal, but you think you can maneuver something into 12?
Well, that's what I would do. I think the reason my thoughts landed on, because there is a projection, you can kind of see it on the graphics on the other side of the house, and given the fact that obviously that's yeah, thank you, a colonial revival house, it has a main block with the entry at the middle of it, and generally many of them always had sort of wings off to the left and right. Obviously, a new house would have to be reconfigured, given the fact that that increment of 20 feet is going to be difficult for you guys. But I would still attempt to get the garage in from the side of the residence in order to keep those garage doors not facing Flying Point Road. That's kind of it in a nutshell, to be honest with you.
Well, I think you're wise to think that the garage doors should not face the way the house is oriented, because that doesn't usually get accepted by the ARB.
Exactly. Or reasonable-minded people.
And there really is a real effort here to not have it below, underneath the house and have that same pit effect that, that Highland had mentioned, as you can see in those photos, to really try to avoid this is really paramount here.
It would be nice to see that go back to natural grade.
Agreed, absolutely. It would make any house look sensible on that property. It's just that frontal edge gets so constricted. But the whole concept, could it be done? Yeah, it would have to be redesigned and reconfigured a little bit. But considering the fact that you'd have to be able to get around to the side and come up on a bluff or raise the grade of the actual driveway as you're coming along the side to get up into that and try to recontour the property back to its natural and reasonable aspects. I think it's for me, I think the pit is a huge detriment. Yeah. In really both aesthetically and architecturally to this piece of property that's facing Flying Point Road. I understand why the original owner built it, so he's forgiven. Because of those attributes. And the odd thing to me, even from an aesthetic standpoint, to me, it looks like you have a structure penetrating into the side yard anyway, even though, quote unquote, it's below grade. But it certainly has a terrible aesthetic impact on entry to this piece of property, as well as being seen from Flying Point Road.
So what are you all proposing at this point?
Well, I would like to confer with the current owner and discuss with him the aspects of trying to minimize the expansion into the front yard setback at Downs. As I said, I think the aspect of that needs to be reviewed, but I would like to review it with him before I sort of make a suggestion without his authorization.
That's fine.
Okay, why don't we do that, and then we'll just adjourn this for all purposes?
Oh, that would be fine with me. I think that's a sensible conclusion, given what we have on our plates. We kind of know your direction. You know what my architectural concerns are, and I'm sure you have similar concerns given what your knowledge of the site and what's going on over there. So let me confer with the owner, and I'd like to get back to you if possible, and possibly see you again.
We look forward to it. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn this for all purposes?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to new cases. Case number 3093, 56 Halsey Neck Lane. Jolie is the applicant here.
One moment.
Yeah.
Representing them.
Right, let me just take out the current ones. Hold on. Yes. Lisa Zaloga and Peter, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, Zakats.
And if I may, I will confirm receipt of the affidavits of notice and posting.
I was waiting for Peter to get on, but he seems to be having trouble.
He's on. He just needs to unmute himself and turn on his camera. He is in though.
Okay. Okay, so I will start talking and hopefully Peter will show up. There he is. Okay, so I'm Lisa Zaloga. I'm the architect for Peter Suckach, who owns the property at 56 Halsey Neck Lane. And before I start with the presentation, I was just going to let Peter give a little history of how he's come to this small little piece of property on Halsey Neck Lane.
Hi, Chairman, board members. Thank you for all your hard work. I hope you guys don't do this every Thursday night. You've all probably seen this house over the decades. My parents bought that in 1973. When we bought it, there was a 30-acre farm field in front of the house. Mrs. Lindsay owned it. There were no shrubs in front of the house, huge windows overlooking the farm. It was probably the strangest house in Southampton Village, but my parents saw the value in it. For me, being an only child, being able to be in Southampton, rode my bike down to the beach, had a great time. And moving forward now, both my parents are gone. We have, my wife and I have two wonderful kids, 13 and 15. So Lisa and I have worked really hard on producing this plan to be best benefit to us, to the community, to the neighborhood. We have a letter of support from the neighbor to our north. The neighbor to the south doesn't really have an impact. The driveway runs all across the property to the south. And thank you for your consideration. I listened to your working session, and I don't know if you had the letter of support in front of you at that time, but I'll let Lisa take it from here.
Okay, so this is a piece of property that is in the actually, I'm going to share my screen with you, if that's okay, so that I can show you the survey, if it comes up. Okay, so this is a piece of property that is in the R80 zoning district. It's a tiny little square of R80. I can show you the zoning map here, shows you this tiny little square of R80 that is kind of surrounded by R20 and then R180 off to the south. So, and Peter's property sits right on the corner of that, basically. The lot currently, this is the existing survey on the bottom here. So the lot currently has a pre-existing non-conforming one-story residence on the property. It's set 50.3 feet back from Halsey Neck Lane. You know, the lot is 17,895 square feet in the R80 district. So we're less than 20% of what's required in terms of zoning. So the existing house is, I'm sure you've all driven by it and seen it. It's just a one-story concrete wall facing the street. There are no windows that face the street, and there are no windows that face the back of the property. This is actually the back of the house, and you can see that it's surrounded by probably 15-foot high hedges on the north side, and very tall arborvitae that separate it from the 33-foot wide flag lot that is next door to it. So our proposal is to demolish that house and construct a new 1.5-story residence, swimming pool, and detached garage at the rear of the property. Now, in R80, the setback, the required setback is 80 feet. By zoning, by lot coverage, by lot size zoning, our setback would, of course, only be about 30 feet. But being that we're in the R80 zoning, it is in fact 80 feet. Now, I know you guys asked me to do a streetscape. I did the streetscape, as well as I just wanted to show you the aerial photo of all of these, all the properties, all the adjoining properties. And you can see where the existing house is and how close to the street it is, and where all the neighboring houses are. I also did the neighborhood, where is it? The neighborhood analysis that you asked for, that shows, again, this is our proposed house. It shows you the edge of the R80 zoning, and then the properties to the south are all R120 zoning or 3-acre zoning. So the comparison to the neighborhood gets a little tricky in that most of these houses in the R120 zoning are actually set back farther than our rear property line. And then the properties to the north, obviously, are also on slightly larger lots. However, they still don't conform to R80 zoning. So I'm not sure why this little pocket of R80 zoning came into being. So I did do a little chart just so that you could see the properties to the north of us that go towards Hill Street that are in the R80 zone. None of those are conforming to the R80 zoning, and the lots, although they're larger than our lot, some by almost double, the setbacks are not overly great. We do have the one, that it's 89 feet and 114 feet, but the other two do not actually conform to the 80-foot setback either.
Excuse me, Lisa.
Yeah.
Could you go back one, which was the area where you had done the green drawings? Because I just wanted to ask a question about this property. Is the drawing that you've put in, marking it, is that the proposed or the existing?
That's the proposed.
Okay.
So that proposed setback is 65.3 feet back. So we've pushed it back 15 feet from where it currently sits.
Yeah.
But I'm asking for 14.7 feet from what would be required under the R80 zoning.
Okay.
Not the lot size zoning, but the R80 zoning.
But Lisa, part of the scheme here is distorted a little bit, because interestingly, the two lots to the north are actually further back than required by zoning. Further.
They are. And the lot, in this lot immediately adjacent to us, actually, they did an addition to their house, and they actually came to you a year ago in November to get a rear yard setback for their porch. So this lot next to us they're further back than required by zoning, but they also needed a rear yard setback for their porch and their swimming pool. Not for the swimming pool, but they needed a rear yard setback for the porch. And this lot that is behind Peter and also wraps around with this flag lot, that was also granted a variance. That one's a little trickier. It was a subdivision variance that allowed them to use the area of this flag lot to get to 80,000 square foot lots. So that lot is, the creation of that lot is not that old, and it does happen to conform to the R80 zoning, which is what I was, you can see here, it's 58 Halsey Neck Lane, and they got, using the fact that they can use that flag lot under the variance, they were allowed to create a lot that's about 80,000 square feet. So that one does actually conform to the R80 zoning. And then, interestingly enough, even those two larger lots that are immediately adjacent to the property on the south, their setbacks are obviously huge, but their lots actually don't even conform to the R120 zoning. So, you know, it's the character of the neighborhood, I think, is somewhat hard to jump into just by virtue of the fact that it is right on the line between R80 and R120, and none of the lots, you know, that were pre-existing non-conforming actually even comply to the R80. So a little strange, but you asked me for it, and this is what I have. So back to the survey. So our proposal is to create this residence that's 65.3 feet from the street. The current, I don't know if you drove by, but you know, there's obviously the whole front of this property is a parking lot. And part of our goal is to bring the cars down along the north property line and create a detached garage in the back. That doesn't require any variances at all. The side yards, I don't require any variances. I'm not looking for anything, lot coverage, gross floor area, all of those things are conforming. It's primarily the front yard setback and our pyramid. So again, a little odd part of the code is that anything, you know, in an R20 zone or lower, the pyramid law starts at +5 on the sides. And anything above in the R40 and above, it for some reason starts at grade. That was done back in 2017. I'm not 100% sure what the logic of that is, but it definitely is not good for this lot. Our goal here was to create a 1.5-story house that would fit into the character of Southampton. My goal is always to kind of break up the facades and create dormers and break the parts that are non-conforming to the pyramid, so that it doesn't have the feeling of a big overwhelming shadow along the property. So the variances, I don't know if you actually read through the letter. I know it sounds particularly that there's 3,000 cubic feet of relief, but it's actually broken down into lots of different gables and dormers. And I don't think that the house will appear to be, you know, overly overwhelming in any way. Some of the relief, even on the north side here, is behind the chimney, which doesn't have to conform to the pyramid, so is kind of, you know, hidden and nobody would even question it.
Can you show the west elevation again?
The west elevation? This one?
So where you're infringing most on the pyramid law is the side that's facing the driveway to the south.
Correct. And that has a 6'4" high plate height. You know, I did try to keep it low, you know, and just pop up a couple of dormers in there. But yes, that's where the majority of it is. And that's where I kept my, you know,
I think it's on the other side.
This is the north side.
Right. So the south side, where you're infringing more on the pyramid law, is actually the side that faces the driveway to the south.
Correct.
Okay. So what I'm saying is you're not infringing upon another house, you're infringing upon somebody's driveway entrance.
On the south side, correct.
Okay.
And we do have, you know, we showed the plans to the neighbor, and we do have a letter of support from them. They, you know, they did get to see the plans and the survey, and they had no objection to it. You know, I created the gables facing the south side, and I did try to run kind of the roof line along almost parallel to the pyramid law, so that it's not an overwhelming overshadowing. I'm not creating shadow on their property. And, I do have a 15-foot high hedge also separating us. So I kind of felt like I was not, even though the number may sound a little larger, it didn't really feel like it was overwhelming for the neighbor.
On the site plan, can you address why you wouldn't site the pool north-south?
Well, a couple of reasons. I have to have a 20-foot setback for each one, so the pool would only be able to be 30 feet long. Plus, I'm trying to create the driveway coming down the back part of the property there, so it just seems to get a little cluttered back there for that. You have kind of this long vista. I think that to have the pool running crosswise is gonna kind of cut the property in half from what you're actually gonna get use-wise.
Yeah.
Lisa, I was talking about the pyramid relief on the north side. That's a lot. I mean, I don't think we've ever given this much pyramid relief on any pyramid application before. It's a lot of pyramid relief.
Are you primarily concerned with the north side? That's kind of what
north. Well, because the south side faces that flag road, it's not really as big of an impact. Where this side is facing the neighbor's property. And
so I heard you discussing that at the work session, and I did create an alternate plan or elevation, I guess, if you will. And this is the alternate, and this actually, I've shifted the house over 2 feet to the south so that I've actually, it does two things, which interestingly enough, it not only does it reduce the impact on the north side, move me further away from the closest neighbor on the north side, it reduces the pyramid relief on the north side significantly. And it actually reduces the total amount of relief that I would need for the pyramid law by 458.5 cubic feet. So that's actually a 15% reduction in the amount of pyramid relief that I was asking for. Obviously doing that.
Yeah, I like that a lot better.
Side. What's that?
I said I like that a lot better.
Yeah, it increases it on the south side, but the neighbor on that side is over a 33-foot right of way, and then their property, their house is even it's 98 feet away. So I think that it might be a better project to try and get further away from another structure. So I think we were happy with this too.
And there's less windows on that side facing that property.
Facing north or south?
The south. You don't have as much blast on that side either.
Correct. So this is the other alternate south elevation. You can see that it just kind of is a sliver of the roof line on that side and a couple of pop-up dormers, and then the majority of the relief actually ends up on the south side. So it would knock it down, like I said, 458 cubic feet. So it brings it down. The total is 2579.9. Again, it's all in pieces, it's not one big, overly large thing that's overhanging. It's all broken down into different pieces.
Well, I don't see I can never find any numbers on your plans. How tall is the house?
How tall is the house? The highest, if you go to the front elevation, this highest peak right here is 30 feet. And that's just that little tiny peak. The rest of it is lower than that. This side is 27 and change. The other gables are about 27 feet high. It's not a tall house. And it is, all the plate heights come down to, to 2 feet above the floor. You know, this plate height over here is 4'9". On the front of the house, it's 6'4". You know, I've brought all the roof lines down to the best of my ability. So this would be the street elevation. You know, the front porch would also give it that horizontal line. I didn't think it was too overpowering. Any questions?
Julia, do you have any questions?
There's one that what is the total square footage of this house now? It's like 34.
Of the proposed?
Yeah.
The total proposed gross floor area is 3,200 square feet.
Okay. And you've been able
I'm
to bring the
allowed-
sky plane down to, I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, and I was just gonna say that the maximum allowable is 3,289 and a half,
Okay, and you've got to,
3,200, so I'm 89 under.
okay. And the sky plane, you've shifted it now from the original down to, I'm just want to confirm this in my brain.
Yeah.
2,500?
Correct. It went from
Okay.
3,038 to 2,579.9.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, that was by moving it, you know, by shifting it over 2 feet, which, you know, I originally started out I figured I was trying to go straight through the property and keep it equal setbacks, but I think this probably makes more sense.
And so the variations are the front yard for 15 square feet about.
Mm-hmm.
And now the sky plane is less.
Correct.
And Dan, has the zoning board, does that number for the sky plane elevation, is that now something, are those numbers that you've heard before? That you've had to approve before? Because I don't have a context for that historically.
We've been fairly stingy on relief for payment relief.
Right.
But in a lot of those cases, they weren't butted up against R120. They were like
Right.
in areas that were like much smaller lots where houses really were a lot closer together. So I think the impact of this pyramid relief is on the neighbors is a lot less than a lot of the other pyramid applications, which might have had a lot less pyramid requests, but had a lot more impact on the neighbors.
And I have one more question to ask. I'm sorry. The neighbor who you were talking about as a driveway, that's an R120, correct?
The
neighbor who is now on the side that would be most impacted. Are
No,
they
they're
now the R?
No,
Are they?
the
I'm
driveway,
pointing at the screen. Sorry.
if I may, the driveway is in the R80.
Okay.
The driveway and that large lot behind it, that's all R80.
Right.
Okay.
Actually,
you've
my
got a
arrow goes
30
too far. Yeah, it should stop at the flag lot. These three lots here on the right-hand side of the screen, those are in R120. Everything else is R80.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, I mean, I think it also, you know, it kind of, what to Danny's point is, you know, all these houses are very large. You know, I don't, they're very large and they're very far away. I don't really think I don't think we'll have any impact on them in terms of the relief that we're looking for.
Well, if we're supposed to be thinking about we're supposed to be thinking about the land, the home that is in the R120, what is the setback if that house were to disappear and another house were to go up?
The one immediately adjacent to us?
Not the one with the flag lot driveway that's an R80. I understand that.
Mhm.
I'm asking about the 120 that's next to it.
And what do you want to know? How far it's a
What the
setback?
setback would be for that R120 if that house that were there disappeared?
In R120, the minimum setback is 80 feet.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you, Lisa.
And that house is currently set at 167 feet.
Okay.
Lisa, I'm more concerned, I'm sympathetic to the idea of the pyramid law relief because it's a narrow lot and it's difficult to work with a narrow lot, but it's not it is a deep lot. What do we have, 250? What's our depth there?
Yeah, I think it's 250, right? What is it? Yeah, 250 exactly, almost.
So, I do have some concern about this house being as far proud of the neighbors and having front yard relief 65 feet where 80 is required. I think it could look a little still out of character with the neighborhood, even though I appreciate that the other houses are actually set back farther than they need to be.
Right, and I mean, I think I think, Mark, if you look at this map here, right, and obviously this house up here is, plus or minus 30 feet off of the street, and
on the corner, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
No, all I was going to say is, I'm at no point in time, even if I were to move back another 15 feet, I don't think that it's going to be a noticeable, obviously I'm not going to be in line with the ones adjacent to me on either side. And I think the benefit to Peter and the property is a lot more substantial than somebody driving by on Halsey Neck Lane and noticing whether I'm another 15 feet further back. I mean, I don't even think you see the house now at 50 feet,
You see the house.
I can't, at no point am I going to be able to get back to where they are. So I'll never be in the line.
No, you won't be in line. You might be closer to being compliant or compliant. So I guess the question is, it has something to do with why are you putting a garage all the way back there? And I guess it's also a pool house.
It has a little, it's not really a pool house. It has like a little countertop in there and a little place where you can go into. There's no bathroom. There's an outdoor shower. There's no bathroom. I don't know, I guess we go back to the definition of a pool house. It's a little, a little tiny space. And the part of the reason that the garage is in the back is just by virtue of the fact that my lot is so narrow. I don't want to have the garage doors facing the street, and I don't want to, I can't put a garage in the front yard. I don't want to have the garage doors facing the street, and to try to put the garage off to the side and have it attached to the house really starts to even gets to be a little tricky in terms of getting to the front door, and it just really would completely impact the street facade to try to put a garage in the front. So that was why we ended up with the garage in the back, keep it out of the view and have a nice street facade.
The house got moved back any further, it would really.
I'm sorry, Kevin?
If the house got moved back any further, it would interfere with their backyard, which is their recreation area.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm exploring with them is are there alternate locations for that garage? What's your side yard setback on the garage, Lisa?
My side yard or my rear yard?
No, I know your rear yard shows as 10. What would be your side yard?
The side yard on the south side is 21.5.
No. What's permitted?
Oh, sorry. And in excess, my 10 is side and rear. But I can't put the accessory structure in the front yard.
No, I'm looking at it behind the house. I'm trying to figure out some way, and I'm sure you explored this too, of bringing the house a little bit further, but still having a substantial backyard. If there's some way to create that, because You know,
And I do also, it's 65.3. The majority of the house though is actually another couple of feet further back just by virtue of the fact that it's a porch also. So not the majority of the house is even a little further back than that because I do have this front porch on it. So there's just one section that actually pokes through at that point.
Okay, so do we have any more questions, or what do we want to do for right now? Do we want to hold it open and talk about it?
May I just make a comment?
Of course.
The Watkins to the north of us, we were discussing the site plan and the setting of the houses. We thought that it was beneficial to have the houses sort of offset. So in the winter time, when the leaves aren't on the privet, you're not staring at each other through the windows. So I think for the property that we're moving 15 feet back from where it is, it's a huge benefit, especially, I know it's a beautiful house, but it's gonna be a massive improvement. I mean, that thing is ugly. I mean, it's hard for me to say, but, and as people drive by here, I mean, it's such a narrow lot. If you blink, you don't see the house. I see friends of mine drive by all the time. I can't even wave to them because they're moving at a fast clip. And if you're walking by, it's going to be a massive improvement visually. I mean, it's a bit of an eyesore. We've had a wonderful time there, and it was really beautiful when there was farmland in front of us, and we didn't have shrubs, and we had that view. But it's going to be a massive improvement. So it's a huge benefit to the neighborhood. I think it's a huge benefit to these neighbors that sort of go like this when they drive by. So I think the benefit to us as a family with kids and a dog, that that added amount of relief that we're asking for in the back is a huge benefit for us. So that's what I think. And if we could do something else to make everyone feel better about the front, I don't know if screening it more with I would put evergreen, because we also have a huge problem with deer across the street. There's that huge empty lot that is not well kept, and there are deer coming in all the time. So we're gonna actually screen off the front and put cattle bars or something to keep the deer out. And when we redo all this, we're gonna put, they already have deer fencing on the north side, and we're gonna put deer fencing in the rear and the south to keep it out. And that's gonna benefit the neighbor behind us. They're happy about that. So the neighbors are happy about what we're doing. There's no doubt about that.
And Peter, you also said you'd be willing to get rid of one of the entrances. There's currently 2 entrances onto the street, which you know,
so
is a little difficult. So you said you'd be willing to get rid of one of
I'd
them.
be happy to, I'd be fine with getting rid of the north entrance and using the south entrance so you can't see. The one thing I don't like about a lot of houses in the village is that you can see down the driveway straight into the garage, every single one that you drive by. Personally, I think that's a bit of an eyesore sometimes. So that's why we designed it the way it is, where the garage is, the doors are facing north, so you don't see it from the street. And if I got rid of, I keep pointing at the screen as if you can see it. But if we took away the north entrance and you have to come in the south and weave around a bit, then you won't be able to see down the driveway. It's a benefit. It'll add some screening from the road. So I just don't think it's that noticeable, my humble opinion. I think it's a benefit that the house is going to be a hell of a lot better looking and 15 feet farther back from where it is.
But did I follow that correctly? You would get rid of the southern driveway?
No, the northern one.
The north entrance, so you can't see down the whole.
Right, but then so you would be changing the site plan, because how would you enter your garage and how would you back in and out?
Well, instead of, anyway.
I think he's thinking he'll come in on the south, from the south one, and come through and across.
Right, so instead of coming in the north, I would get rid of that and then just keep it exactly as it is, except hedge that in, come in here, And there'll be room for a couple cars here, but I intend on keeping, if I have this back here, then there's no need for more than 1 or 2 cars. 1 most of the time, 2 if someone visits in the front. So I think that'll be a benefit.
I'm not really sharing the screen with you, but Lisa, if you think it would be helpful to redo the site plan just to show the elimination of one of the 2.
I mean, I could have the surveyor get rid of this entrance here so that you would be able to see that you'd come in and you would have to go around to get all the way to the back.
Oh, so you would traverse in front of the house?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, that's what I wasn't following.
Oh, sorry.
You'd enter from the south and then go across the front of the yard.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is there room if you park cars there? Can you still go around?
Yes, because I actually have my 3 required parking in the back, and then I have the 1, you see this number 4 here, that's just, we only need 1 required parking spot in the front. So if we get rid of that 1 entrance on the north there, we will still be able to get by them very easily.
Did you mean parking wise or to get by?
Both.
Yeah. There'll be enough room because as it is now 15 feet farther out, I'm able to come in and get by and go back out when there are cars parked perpendicularly to the house.
Okay, can we adjourn this for all purposes and we'll have a work session on it and have another meeting on it? Does that work for everybody?
If I may just weigh in briefly.
Sure.
It sounds like there was some discussion regarding moving the whole house to the south, which I believe would require an additional variance. So if that is something that is being contemplated, that would need to be renoticed for a public hearing.
It actually reduces my pyramid variance. What new variance are you thinking I would need?
You're saying if you moved it 2 foot to the south, you'd be over the 15-foot side yard setback.
I do not, according to Tin at the building department, there's 2 sections of the code and regarding total setback and side yard setback. And if I am undersized for my zoning, the code that I use is the 4/10 relief, and my 4/10 relief of the 70-foot lot is a total of 28 with a minimum of 11.2, and that I do not actually have to conform to the 15 feet.
Okay, I was just going by the numbers on your survey that said a side yard was required of 15. So
yeah, no,
we're gonna do. We need.
Tim corrected me for that. So I would not need a side yard variance. I would actually be reducing my pyramid relief request.
Okay, then there wouldn't be, assuming your representation with Tin is correct, which I assume it is, and we could get that confirmed or have the numbers updated to reflect that, then that there wouldn't be an additional variance. It wouldn't be a renotice issue.
Okay.
But we would need a new survey.
You would need a new survey. I can give you the new survey and the new elevations that would show that if the board likes. I mean, I'd love to get some feedback just so that, when we do come back, that hopefully we can close this out and get started. So if you have any, if that sounds like a good idea to you, I'm more than happy to have the surveyor revise the drawings and get them to you before the work session.
No, absolutely. That I think that goes a long way to solving the concern about the pyramid law relief. If you want to wait to see, because I would like to have a discussion with the board about the front yard setback relief. We just haven't had that discussion yet, so I just want that opportunity. You might want to hold off and just be more efficient about it.
When is your next work session? Do you know?
I think it's
Soon.
December 8th. Is that correct?
Yes, 8th and a meeting on the 17th.
Yeah.
December 8th, and then the meeting is on the 17th?
Correct.
Wow. Okay, well, that might give me enough time to get the survey revised if I listened in on the work session. Then I could probably get you the stuff. Is there anything else that anybody wants to speak now to?
No, I'm fine with this application.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, now, let's, so can I have a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
You.
We can move on to our last case, case number 3094, 980 Meadow Lane Trust.
Oh, Chick is back.
One
Yeah.
moment.
Is the applicant here for this?
Yeah,
Joe?
one moment.
Lisa Poyer may be here from InterScience,
Yes, believe she's raised her hand as well.
and it looks like Gil is
Yes,
here.
the video's already on, right?
Yep, we can see
And,
and hear
uh,
you.
You
and
see me?
Stephen,
Okay.
and Stephen Naroda as well.
From Aris Design,
And Joe Lombardi.
from Rayner Group.
Everyone's in.
Okay, for the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton, with support behind me as just announced. I believe you should have an affidavit of posting and an affidavit of mailing, which I submitted midday today for the file.
Okay, I'll have to take your word for it. It wasn't forwarded to me by the building department.
I can represent to you, I delivered it myself right around noontime.
Thank you very much.
Okay. This is an application strictly for a wetland special permit to allow certain landscaping and grading within 125 feet of the wetlands boundary. It's a small pocket of wetlands located to the north and east of this property. In fact, on the property that you heard earlier in the evening. It is not a request for any wetland setback relief for any of the buildings or structures which we're proposing. In fact, all of those either meet or exceed the 150-foot setback, as does the sanitary system, which is well in excess of 200 feet from the wetlands, and in fact would be the upgraded low nitrogen, the IA system. I think the essence of this application can be seen if you review the comparison chart, which was submitted as part of the application. And if Chick is able to put that up on the screen, I think that would be instructive. And I can go through that very quickly and then perhaps invite questions or comments on some of the particulars.
Gil, I'm kind of fumbling around. I should have it, but is anyone on your team able to share a screen?
Gil, I can do it. Just give me half a
Oh,
second to.
Okay, Lisa. Yeah, if you could do
find
that, that
it.
would be great.
Or whoever
Scrolling.
gets there first.
I'm scrolling down.
What I intend to do is just to hit some of the high points of this project and the ways in which we think it results in quite a bit of environmental improvement over what's there now.
You guys see the screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. One of the first things I'd point out, as you can see there, is that there, as you know, there's an existing paved driveway that provides access to the existing structure. One of the aspects of this application would be to reduce the amount of driveway coverage within 125 feet of the wetlands from about 4,457 square feet to 2,517 square feet, which is nearly a 45% reduction in the area of driveway located within the wetland setback. And furthermore, with respect to the driveway, we're increasing the setback of the driveway from the wetlands from 48 feet to 62 feet. So we're doing two things which are positive with respect to that. Furthermore, as you probably know, and if not, I'll tell you, there currently is no drainage control associated with the existing driveway access to the property. Our proposal would be to provide some drainage control structures which would capture runoff from the driveway and some of the surrounding area. And from my understanding that those catch basins would then pipe the runoff into an area that is even further from the wetlands. Perhaps the most interesting thing, which I'm sure you'll hear from Steve Naroda about a little bit, is the addition of a wetlands buffer to this property where none currently exists. And if you look at the first line on the comparison chart, you'll see that while now there are no wetlands buffer, we're proposing to create 25,673 square feet of wetlands buffer, which is considerably more than half an acre, which we think is substantial. As I mentioned before, we do not need any structural setback relief whatsoever. The existing house also is, well, let me back up a minute. The existing garage is within 150 feet of the wetlands. We would be getting rid of that, so we would be getting rid of that problem. The proposed new dwelling would be FEMA compliant, whereas the current dwelling is not. We would have, as I say, an upgraded sanitary system. And we think that the net result of this project would be a considerable environmental benefit. And I think among us all, I think the appearance would be more attractive than the existing house, which looks like a cake box on supports. So what I'd like to do, if you have any questions of me, is to answer them. Otherwise, I'd like to have Steve Naroda at Aris Design perhaps run through a summary of the wetlands buffer and the benefits and aspects of that, if that would be suitable for you. And Chick, I think if you could, or if someone could pull up the
I'm working on it.
revegetation plan, that's the one last revised October 20, sheet RV1. Okay, that's it. So Steve, if you'd be kind enough to give a thumbnail sketch of what we're achieving here.
Sure. Good evening. Steve Naroda with Aris Design, Landscape Architecture. I think just to follow on what Gil was just outlining, essentially, the existing condition is a monoculture of lawn right now, and this program seeks to revegetate and buffer with native plant material, which would equal, Gil pointed out, it's like a little over 25,000 square feet within the 125-foot landscape setback, and then 33,000 within the 150-foot setback. So we carry that native re-veg south into the to the 150 line as well. We worked kind of diligently with the Rayner Group when they designed the grading and drainage plan. We worked with them in providing the plant material that would be successful in this area, where it would receive stormwater, help to drain it in place, and filter it in place so it gets back into the water table. It will help, the buffer will help prevent any problems with adjacent wetlands. Essentially, it's composed of a mix of evergreen trees, deciduous trees, shrubs, grasses, and ground covers that are very suitable for this area, for this site condition. And it'll provide habitat, food source, nectar for wildlife as well. So all in all, I mean, it's a fun project for us because it's a big area that really provides us an opportunity to really make this a beautiful, diverse landscape. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
I might also add that some of the additional plans we submitted, which Steve's office prepared, include a fairly detailed construction methodology, which is something we know that you always want to see. And I think that fairly covers how we would protect the wetlands during the course of construction. If you have any questions, we try to be happy to see if we can answer them.
Dick, do you have any questions?
Was that directed to me, Mark?
Yes, Chick.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a couple. If you look at aerial photographs, there is an existing parking area and driveway that is a little bit farther east on the site. And I think Lisa's showing it here. And that's helpful. So you can see that white dashed line. And what they're doing is kind of shifting that farther west and creating a pretty extensive buffer. My questions just are if we can make things a little bit better. The way the driveway branches off, it actually creates quite a bit of driveway surface within the 125-foot area. And I'm just wondering if a reconfiguration of that could reduce the amount of disturbance within the 125-foot buffer, and also potentially kick the driveway a little bit farther west. My other question is that, Lisa, if you go back to the landscape plan, there is a sanitary access way that is also within the 125 feet. And I imagine that's because of the house design, the way it kind of separates the sanitary system from the driveway.
Chick, it's actually beyond the 125. It's within the 150-foot structural setback.
Okay.
The green line is, Eris's plan is the 125, and then that red line is the structural. So we've
Got it.
designed it outside of the 125.
So will that be able to be a native fescue or some type of non-fertilizer dependent vegetation?
Yes, we've proposed it as such.
Yeah, we propose as a native fescue.
Okay. And it looks like there's additional vegetation even beyond that.
Yes.
Okay. So really, the only question that I have has to do with the driveway configuration and if improvements can be made to reduce the amount of driveway disturbance within the 125 feet. And I would like to hear from Joe on the drainage.
Joe, do you want to go ahead and handle the drainage question? Or is there a specific question, Chick?
No, I think a description, it looks to me as though there's a portion of the driveway that will not have drainage containment. I will note for the board that there looked like there was about 1,600 cubic yards of fill that's being placed within the 125 feet, if I read that correctly. And I believe that's on the Rayner plan. So I think just a kind of an overview of the drainage and the fill would be helpful.
Okay. Well, we'll start with the drainage. We have some drainage inlets near where the Y is in the driveway. Those will actually feed drainage structures which are outside of the 125-foot setback. And then from that point to the road, we are not proposing any drainage. It's within the wetland setbacks and didn't want to do that. And that's where the landscaping plan comes in. Because the little bit of runoff that would be from that section of the road will drain off the road into vegetation, and the vegetation should be able to accommodate that and help with collecting that water and possibly even helping with the recharge.
And it is a pervious driveway. I did make note of that on the Eris design plan.
Right.
And you can see the way the driveway branches off. It does create quite a bit of disturbance within the 125 feet. It seems as though extending the Y in the driveway would be one way to do it, or perhaps interconnecting the two parking areas. It is, it's quite a lot. I recognize that it's a little bit better than what's there now. But if that can be improved, I appreciate your looking at that.
All right, Chick, we can take a look at that and get back to you on that for the next hearing.
And Joe, your subsoils are good for leaching capabilities?
Yes, they are.
So just for the board, this is as Gil said, this is a project that conforms to the structure setbacks. It conforms to the sanitary setbacks. It involves about 1,600 cubic yards of fill within the 125 feet. The offset is less driveway and parking surface area and an extensive restoration plan. The table that Lisa presented is accurate. It seems to indicate that there would be a net environmental benefit. And I would look to challenge the design team if they can make some further improvements. So that's all I have on this.
So should we check it at this point, just adjourn it for all purposes?
Well, certainly if any board members have comments or if there's anyone left from the public, but that's fine with me once you go through the steps.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn case number 3094, 980 Meadow Lane Trust for all purposes?
So moved.
Second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds like it's getting late, huh?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Aye.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I have a motion to close the hearing, the November 19th hearing of the zoning board of appeals for the village of Southampton?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.